They didn't have sound.
Oh, I got
sound.
What do you got?
I got a real quick joke for you guys.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Kick this off the right way. Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. So if a bluebird has blue babies and a blackbird has black babies, what kind of bird has no babies? Ready?
Yeah. You got me.
Wait.
Do you know, Jeff?
No.
A swallow.
So bad. God. That's right around that's what I expect. There we go. It's I
got a dad joke for you guys too. You ready?
Hear it.
Do you know that Bruce Lee had a vegetarian brother?
No, he didn't. Did he?
Yeah, he did. You know what his name was?
What
about you, Jeff?
No, I don't know.
Broccoli.
Broccoli.
Seems so obvious.
Yeah, that's I know who told you that dad joke. That sounds like Penny told you that joke.
No, I found that on Instagram or TikTok. One or two. I don't know.
So just so you could torture her?
Yes, absolutely.
That sounds about right. You just look up dad jokes all the time. She's like, Dad. She's getting.
I'm starting to learn some like esoteric based ones too for if you have ghosts. So this one may or may not work for you, but so two witches, cats run into each other. Do you know what they say?
You
look familiar. See?
Oh my God.
No way.
You guys are welcome. I've ruined your show already.
Yeah.
Can't ruin it. That's one thing that you're never gonna
There's nothing that you can do that we hadn't somehow done before that's ruined it. Yeah, I think I'm to the end. Whiskey and Cigar Society, Thailand.
Please.
Found the end of the internet.
Yep.
I was today, just from the standpoint, I'm not talking one way or another, but Prime Minister of India was here today, right? And everybody, my 40 or 39% of my following is from India. So I'm hoping that when they work out all the tariffs, that it's off of American whiskey and you all can send all the whiskey over to India. And then I'll have like a following of insanity. Because right now, it's not really a fair. They put so many tariffs on it. It's not worth doing it. Although the people from India want American whiskey, probably for the same reason why we all want the whiskey is because we can't have it. American's whiskey is really popular in India because they can't get it.
Well, there's you use the proper terminology there because that's the next whiskey thing is American whiskey, not bourbon, not anything else. American whiskey.
Well, I can tell you, American whiskey is all that's going to India because honestly, they don't drink it with the same. Their how they drink whiskey is a whole different ball game.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they're all into barrel proof. So when they're talking,
I'm still about barrel proof, but it's going to be American whiskey, not bourbon.
Well, I'm telling you, it's even if they were shipping it, it can't still be because sometimes it's 70%. It's 70 proof, and it's just we're talking about a whole different palette that we might be able to eventually, once we start sending it over there, evolve it to barrel proof and whatnot. But that's not what they're into. I mean, I look up some of the stuff that they comment on, and they'll comment on different whiskeys, and you look at it, and the highest proof it'll ever be is 80. But they have them at 60. It's just, I understand we have 21 proof. What's that called? Stuff you could sell at Walmart. And if you ever,
malt liqueur.
Oh my God, liqueur, malt liqueur.
See how I fancied it up?
I loved it. You're known for fancying things up.
Right. All right. Don't ever forget. I came from a trailer park. I know exactly who I am.
And it's who you always be. You're close to your roots. I mean, that was just one thing I was just thinking about. It's like it's Indiana. That's what, and I want to talk to you about that because, you know, when you decided that when you wanted to move on, you probably were at the point where you could have decided to pick up everybody and gone someplace and done a more what would you say, commercial type endeavor. I mean, I really think you have the talent, but at the same time, you chose to kind of, and I understand. I kind of was thinking. I thought a lot about it today because I had a certain amount of time because I wanted to do this interview. I'm excited for one. It's like tonight, what, you know, me and Nash were like, what do we drink? You know what I mean? And it's kind of like I know the direction of what you've been doing and where you're going. And we have a lot of people on tonight. Are you watching the comments there, Nash?
Paquito, and I mean this in the best possible way. You guys kind of know where I'm going, but trust me, no one knows short of Tyler and Jolie right now exactly where we're going.
No,
because this is there's no if this were a coloring book, you wouldn't even, there would be no lines. It would just be blank pages.
Well, honestly, there's a general outline of what you've learned. Now, what's exciting is because we were with you from almost from the start at your former place, and
you can say its name. I'm not disapproving of its name.
Okay, and I'm gonna figure out how.
I still have
6.
You know.
Yeah. Okay.
So
you're not as dark as you were. You're not quite as dark as you were like a couple months ago, where it's like, yeah, I felt like I if I said that you have lasers out your eyes and kill me.
Egregores are not necessarily evil things. It's the intent that's put into the egregore before it becomes an archetype that decides whether it's good or bad.
Hey, I did want to mention to you, as I was looking too, on the warehouse, you need to update your bio on there because it still has you working at that other distillery.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll have to mention that.
I just have to throw this out that on YouTube, LeBron James was like, "What's up, Tiny?" I don't think it's but if it's actually LeBron, hey man, it's cool. We're from Ohio. It's like, want to drink some whiskey with us? But I don't think it would be actually LeBron James on a weeknight.
I don't know. I mean, Larry Bird tunes into pretty much everything I do.
Well, that's cool. But he is retired. And LeBron's probably had a game tonight. That's probably why. Although it is 3 hours earlier, so he might be pre-gaming. But
you see what that is, don't you?
Oh yeah, yeah. That is good stuff too. That's very good stuff.
One of the last distillations of Dick Stowe.
Yep. And I
was fortunate enough to get a bottle when we were out there.
I love pretty much everything that Eric does, obviously, which is why I'm doing the projects with him as well. Eric is a highly underrated distiller and probably, in my opinion, in the top 5 in the United States, and should certainly get a lot more attention than what he does. But yeah, I mean, of course, he only has distribution in Pennsylvania, and that's okay. That's okay. That's perfect.
So the Pram wants to know.
Reason why you don't see very much of his name mentioned outside of that.
It's catching on now. He's starting to get some attention.
Yeah.
So Pram on YouTube said he wants
Liberty Pole too.
Yes, I do.
Sorry, I got excited.
Yeah, Corvette or Camaro? That's a good question for you because damn, I know that's the kind of shit you love.
Oh man, how about so here's the kind of guy I am. How about 1970 step-side Chevy C10?
Oh yeah.
3 on the tree.
There you go. That's
Yeah,
that's the
nice.
answer I would expect.
Good pick.
But I did pull out the Liberty poll. So, you know, when you started out, we haven't started the audio yet.
What did I tell you
But-
about that earlier on the phone? My wife's just right on the other side of that curtain there.
That's right. We have liberty in this country, but we still got to be careful what we do with our polls, boys.
Exactly.
Anyways, so when because we've been doing this for a long time, and I wanted to thank you for this is sponsor month, and not only were you and Jolie instrumental in becoming my first ever sponsor for the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. It was almost like I didn't even know what a sponsor was, and you guys were like sponsoring us, and then you have supported us personally. That's why we're doing this one specifically, because Alan, the brand of Alan Bishop I've always felt amazing, because you're so much more and connected to so many different things. You're connected to history, the history of Indiana, the history of moonshining. You're also connected to the stars, astrology. You are connected to the spiritual aspects, plus making whiskey from the land, the agriculture. So it's kind of like you're the complete package in so many different ways. And because of some of the stuff that I've been into when it comes to energy and healing and things, and really, what would you say, believing in the reading outside the book. There's a certain book that everybody goes by, physics and, certain categories and rules. But the older you and the more you get into it, you realize the rules in many cases were designed to conform to keeping people kind of neutral and not often, so that they could do work and go. But there are so many rules that are wrong. And you have, what would you say? You've studied that, and you kind of have been able to, through the craft of distilling, but also through the craft of farming, agriculture and everything, and being close to that, have kind of developed almost like a folklore. I mean, I honestly think, compared, the reason why so many distillers, master distillers throughout the history are documented is because of what their craft was and the meaning, and people wrote that down. There was a lot of stuff that had to go through. Now today we're so commercial. I feel like that it's not really being written down. It's being sold to us and documented, but it doesn't quite do the same thing where you're more tied into. When it comes to, when you talk about Indiana, you're more like what we read about in the textbooks, or what people wrote about and have in their handbooks of their farms or whatever, where you're looking for the real aspect of the way it can be done and what can go into making spirits. And so that's one thing that I've always been, I felt attached, or a certain bond towards you, because of that natural aspect of what you do. And it's very passionate and that you can see that in you. But one of the things that someone told, I've talked to some other people, and they tell you about, as a healer, that the worst person that you abuse yourself, even though you try and help other people. It's always, they always fight, and he always said, the people that are always helping people or whatever, they're the ones that abuse themselves the worst. And I really feel sometimes that's kind of what you kind of are. I don't know. You're talking about it's one addiction or the other, but it's also because you're so passionate that there's a lot of, what would you say? It's not stress, but a lot of burning of energy, and you have to relax.
Yeah, there's that for sure. For sure. Absolutely. No, I'm all about the practical, if not the unconventional, or the If you put it into esoteric terms, the preternatural as opposed to the supernatural. Miracles are saved for God, and everything that is otherwise unexplainable and improbable yet not impossible is folk magic, as it should be. So,
Okay.
I mean, it's just there's so many things that I found that it's hard to keep going sometimes because it goes against conventional logic that's just not how it is. But then you realize that might be how it is, but it's the hardest thing to get over when it's so unconventional. You know what I'm saying? That it just is. You just like well, that makes no sense.
On the distilling side of things, because I think I kind of know where you're driving at with this as well. So on the distilling side of things, it would have been incredibly easy to go elsewhere, and I've had multiple opportunities throughout the years to do that, including one that I passed up on on an island, not the one that you would think of, off of Scotland, that I passed on because I need to be here with my mom and my dad. And as much as I love the idea of going to Scotland, maybe one day that'll happen. I love Indiana more, and I am incredibly thankful for the very strange career that I have had, being that I'm in Indiana, which is a state rebuilding its distilling heritage and still trying to figure out what its heritage was, because for some reason everybody in the state seems to think that they need to compare themselves to Kentucky in some way, shape, or form, which is silliness. But also because I started off at Copper and Kings. I didn't start off in a bourbon company. I started off like I'm always going to be the underdog, and I like it that way. I like playing in the minor leagues, and I like proving people wrong, and I like doing weird stuff, and I like doing unconventional stuff. And I took the bourbon thing as strange as I could possibly take it within legal bounds at Spirits of French Lick. And I've been there and I've done that, and it was cool and it was great and I enjoyed it and I'm proud of all of it. I'm even proud of the things that they haven't released yet that I know they have sitting in bottles, and I still don't know why they haven't put it out yet. But it's time to wipe the slate clean, right? So if you can't really consider yourself any kind of artist or contributing anything true to society if you don't wipe the slate clean every once in a while and start over, right? Jim Morrison said some silly shit like that one time about you should jump off a bicycle once a week just to make sure you're still alive, sort of thing. Yeah. So this is third time around, which sounds weird. It's like being divorced, 3 times or 2 times, and being married the 3rd time, but for good reasons, because I didn't have a place where I actually was accepted in terms of being able to fully express who and what I am and what the state of distillation in Indiana could possibly be, or what the state of small batch distillation, small batch, not craft, small batch. That's a thing that me and Paul Menta and some other guys are working on right now. Paul Menta from down in Key West, First Legal Rum Distillery down there. There is more to do, and it's almost more fun now in some ways because bourbon is coming down, as I predicted and Christy did several years ago on Distillers Talk when everybody told us we were crazy. We predicted this was coming. And it's here, and it's almost more fun for me now because I get to also be like, A, I told you, and B, well, now we can get some of this sort of, predetermined, you have to be this or that or the other out of the way, and we can provide truly experiential spirits to people.
Well, I don't think it's not exploding like it was before, but people are still drinking whiskey and bourbon and everything. But what I will say to you is I was having a discussion with someone the other day, and he's a consumer. And I'm like, why are you worried about the whiskey industry slowing down? It's the best thing that could ever happen to the consumer. One, if it all starts going on the shelf, that means you're going to be able to walk in. And I just did the podcast. There's every single form of Smoke Wagon, every single form of Penelope, all this stuff that was just flying off the shelf. It's there. So if you don't have to wait in line on a Saturday unless you're waiting for the one main distillery for that they still have figured out marketing pretty damn good. but they still won't let you have it. And then the one they gave to you, then everybody said it was shit because they could get it. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But once
That's exactly what I mean.
yeah, I
That's
know
exactly what I mean.
I mean, right.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there looking at it, but I said to him, it's the best thing that could happen to the consumer. The prices are going to drop. They're going to go back to where they're reasonable because they have to, because otherwise it'll just sit there. And for instance, Bardstown Bourbon Company, the highway, whatever one, has $100. I picked it up. I was like doing this and I wasn't going to buy any whiskey at all. But I had looked at that bottle at $99.99 at least 10 times. I had it in my hand. I'm like, I can't spend $100. It's good, but it's it's not. And I saw it. It was $59.99 marked down. And I'm like, oh, I'm in. And when you think about it, it's just that's the kind of stuff that's going to be happening, and it's exciting for the consumer.
No, it should be. And the other side of it is, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it's going away in any way, shape, or form. What I'm saying is that for me, it's almost more exciting because bourbon is not ever going to be what it was again for a very long time. And that's not a bad thing. And the people that are coming up that are 21 years old now, they are not drinking as much. There is a neo-temperance movement. It is a real thing. It's starting to gain traction. And that's not a bad thing either. We need a little bit of that because we need something to push back against and to be able to push back against, as long as we can keep legislation on our side to whatever degree that we can. But the younger people are drinking experiential at this point, which is phenomenal. But experiential is the thing.
But don't you think, I mean, young people, I just have a 21 or a 22-year-old's palate. It's based off of they haven't burned their taste buds off their tongue. So whiskey is almost impossible for them to drink without just drinking through it. So they'll drink it and they drink it to do what they drink spirits for anyways. There are a few people, but even my son.
I'll have to say this. I do disagree with you there. And here's why I do that. Here's why I say that. Because while I hate the way that cities have developed what used to be industrial areas into now hipster hangouts, whatever you want to call them, whatever you call it nowadays.
Yeah.
The one thing that it has done, though, is it has created a class of people who understand or have started to understand economically the value in a thing versus the perceived value of a thing, because everything became way overpriced. Now, the other side of that, though, is that because of the neighborhoods that they've lived in and because of the world that they've grown up in, they've been exposed to things that you and I, when we were young and we were 21, 22 years old and stupid, we were never exposed to taste-wise, right? They're much more diversified. And so here's the thing from a producer standpoint. So I love the support that you guys have given me, the support that anybody that's ever supported my bourbon gave me. And I hope that I can keep that. And I think that I'll be making a high quality product that will keep that for sure. I know that I'm making that product and beyond what I did previously. But after a certain age group, and let's say that it's my age group, it's 40, 41 years old. If you don't have that customer, you're probably most of the time not going to really get that customer as a long-term customer. They've already the vast majority of them have already sort of settled into whiskey. How often do they drink and what brand do they drink?
Yeah.
Right. This is the first generation I've seen where a couple things are becoming a little more true. They're a little more conservative in some ways than previous generations, and yet they're more exploratory and accepting than previous generations too. And it's even more true to a large degree of the ones that are younger than them that haven't started drinking yet. So in 10 years, there's going to be some really cool things happening. Just like you guys saw craft distillers previously went from like 2 of them were being taken seriously until, 2014, 15, 16, whatever. And then all of a sudden it sort of turned into a thing for craft bourbon distillers. I think you're going to see the same thing happen with adventurous distillers who are really looking at this from an alchemical, spiritual, experiential point of view of, the consumer doesn't need everything explained to them. They don't need it laid out by category, by TTB, right? There's a beautiful section of possibilities, and even rye whiskey is one of these possibilities, obviously. But there are these possibilities within these TTB categories, which as a distiller, And yes, I have to respect them as a distiller and a legal distillery, but as a distiller, TTB categories are trash. Absolute trash. They just are. Like, just talk about a way to paint yourself into a corner, right? Yes, bourbon needs some protection. Certain other things need some protection, but then there are these other cool categories like DSS, which for years we've all been convinced like, oh, that's like that's the Dollar Tree of spirits. No, that's where the fun stuff happens, is where that is. That's where the really interesting, like, just really push the boundaries while also respecting the tradition at the same time. That's where it can happen at, right? And there was a period where 4 years ago, that wasn't possible. That, like, if you were playing that game, unless you were somewhere on the East Coast or the West Coast, no one was interested.
Well,
right?
and that's, but I will give you, like, my son is 26 years old, and on his 21st birthday, I gave him a Knob Creek that was actually dumped on his birthday. Okay. And it was I think it was a 10-year-old or whatever. And he opened it and he drank it, but he is huge into gin. Okay. He's a big gin guy. But his friend's into whiskey, but his friend was into just drinking whiskey. I mean, he was not tasting it. So I was able to get them both tasting. Now at 26, he's asking me he likes the Dalton that we picked, and he's like, always, whenever I come up, I got to bring 2 bottles. And so so what it comes down to is I watched that evolution, but then I'm looking at my stats, and I would think, me being me, okay, I would think the 45 to 60 crowd is what would be who's watching me. Okay. But it's not. It's believe it or not, 18 to 44, and 18 to 24 it's the 24 to 35-year-old crowd right now is like 47%. And the 18 to 44 is making up 80%. And then only 20% 44 and older. And my age people are like 2%. So I don't know,
because they already know what they're going to drink.
Yeah. Whatever. Or they don't want to drink along or whatever. But I will agree with you. Even when I first got in this in 2019, if you said finished bourbon, people like lost their minds. Like, they were not having it. You got ripped. If you drank finished bourbon, you were a wimp or a wuss, or you don't know good whiskey. But now, we're talking about just 6 short years later, that category is something that is accepted, that all of them are doing. And we've already been through every kind of cask you can finish it with, and they're always looking for the next one or double cask. I can't wait till the quadruple oaks comes out. You know what I mean? It's just like, how many times can you use a bourbon in another barrel? It's like, go for the world record 16 times. It's like,
well, again, how far can you push bourbon within the categories, right? It can only go so far, and it's already at the not even jump the shark. It's at Steven Spielberg years after Jaws was done, being like, the shark still looks fake.
Yeah, and so it's gotta define itself and just mellow out. I mean, I just can't believe, though. I guarantee you they're gonna be able to make the supply and demand in the next 12 years, because the amount of whiskey now. The only thing that I really think that can save the category is if we could figure out overseas. If we all of a sudden start shipping whiskey to India, American whiskey, bourbon, and that can go there, they will go crazy. And then again, we won't have enough. But I think some of them
maybe you won't have enough, because I've said this before, and I'll continue to say this because I've done a lot of research on this. So this is where it does help the consumer here in the US. It would have to be India, because there's nowhere else with population growth and nowhere else that can turn their population growth around in the next 30 to 50 years,
right,
in order to meet that demand. And the thing with India is they do now have their own distilleries, and now they have their own traditions, and now they have, money. They're developing economy. Then it becomes a little harder getting your stuff in there. The other part of it is, and I'm going to say this as a prediction. I love single malt whiskey. I absolutely love single malt whiskey. I love that we now have an American single malt whiskey, but I'm going to say it because it's true. Scotland way overproduced everything too, and they're suffering as well. And if any American distillery, short of the one or two that are already big in the single malt and already are on the market, thinks that they are going to compete with the falling prices of Scotch whiskey in the next few years, you are batshit insane. You can't do it.
I will tell you this also. They didn't count on what would happen in America with bourbon. They were thinking they were going to be able to hold it. I mean, you talk to the liquor store owners right now compared to what Scotch was even 6 years ago and what bourbon did to it. It was like, they're like, we used to not be able to keep half the stuff on the shelf. And he goes, I didn't even sell one bottle of it in a day. The one guy said, there was a day I didn't sell one bottle of Scotch. He goes, that's insane compared to what it was. So yes, in America, we do have the buying power and everything, but I agree with you. When there's a lot of people coming out with American single malt, me and you have discussed this. I think it is a category that in America, because American drinkers, as they move on from bourbon, or I think Ed Blaze or Bly told me, he's like, as a bourbon drinker, you have a beginning and an end. It's kind of like, at first you don't know what you're doing, then you kind of get into it, then you kind of try and get them, and then you taste them all. And then you all of a sudden have 4 or 5 bottles of everything. And he goes, and then you go, well, why do I need 4 or 5 bottles of everything? Why do I need the newest one when I already haven't even drank the last 4?
The last one.
So he said it plays out. Well, so you got it.
Well, hey, I just want to say, JJ Jackson is he's on and watching.
What's up, JJ?
He said
Love
that
you, brother.
He's in Kentucky right now, and Indiana does make better bourbon, and that was his comment.
Amen. Pennsylvania is the homeland.
That's
right.
I mean, you can't just group all of Indiana. You actually just have to say Bishop's in Indiana. So yeah, there's some really damn good bourbons being made.
Hey, I haven't even laid down a single cask of bourbon at Old Homestead yet. I will, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But I want to make a couple more comments on the single malt thing. So I do think that American single malt does have a place in small batch distilling in the United States, especially for distilleries like Old Homestead, where you're attached to a tourist attraction, and where you also are like, we're going to have our lake people and all that stuff, which is the normal part of tourism. They drink what they drink, whatever. But I also, because I'm involved and because of my dorkiness and all that stuff, the American single malt category does have a small place in the same way that apple brandy does, right? For the dorks of the dorks, right? And I mean that in a loving way. It's either people that are really into distilling or the technicalities of distilling, even if they don't distill, or the beer guys. Those are the people you're really going to get in American single malt. And so it is a cool category. It's worth having, I think. I don't think that trying to do that on scale is ever going to be a thing. And then the other thing I wanted to say was 2 things. First of all, can you imagine the guys at McKellen, that huge expansion they did, and they're just looking around at everything right now going, shit. You know what I mean? Just shitting their pants right now as we speak. But then secondarily, the Scottish guys and all the big American distilleries also have to be kind of looking around right now going, last time I checked, Ireland was a lap down. How the hell did they catch back up?
What do you mean? I know how they caught back up. They make single malts that don't have peat.
JJ Jackson also said brandy, vintages, support the vintage movement.
Support the vintage movement. Yes, JJ is big on that. And I am too. As a matter of fact, that might be even a thing that we do sometimes with whiskey. Wouldn't be part of the approved label, but there may be, in time when we roll out some whiskeys from Old Homestead, there might be some bottle stickers that go on that have a year on them, because the grain's almost all coming from Indiana. And it's going to change from year to year, especially based on the distilling practices that we are pursuing.
You're talking about brand. All of your brands would have a year on them, or just the brandy?
Maybe everything. It might be whiskey and brandy.
So you're gonna like go one step further into wine. And I agree with you, because people just, the corn crop of every year in this country, based off of drought and rain, it's gonna produce I mean, I don't know if anybody just doesn't understand this. You're talking about sweet corn, right? It's like you eat sweet corn. Some years your grandma would be like, oh, this is a really bad year. The sweet corn doesn't have a lot. It's not sweet. And then other years they'd be like, this is one of the best years for sweet corn. So obviously, when it's the growing season, has a lot to do with the starch or the vegetable of the corn or wheat. I mean, it's like if it's a dry year, obviously the plant will be stunted and not produce as much of the grain. And it's like when it does that, how can it be the same, right?
Well, you have the agronomics, and then you have the extended agronomics of distillation as well, where the year and the weather affects pot stills in the distillery. The year and the weather and the years and the weather over a cycle affects the barrels in the warehouse too. So for people to be able to kind of look at that and go, it's just another layer of involvement potentially, and it wouldn't go on like. I'm not doing any, I'm not planning on doing bottled and bonds and all that stuff in any way, shape, or form this time. Like there'll be 100 proof stuff and 4-year-old stuff, and it won't be, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Why do you have
no reason to? Yeah.
Because everybody trusts you already. You're your own government. I get why people do the bottled and bond, but you don't need that. You're your own government. No, you're not going to put shit out.
And I wouldn't say that I was the first, because I doubt I was the first, but I'd say I was probably within the first 3 or 4 craft distillers that started throwing bottled and bond on products because it was such a big thing, and now everybody does, which is great. They should.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think those levels of involvement, right? Those levels of involvement. And so I'll give you an example at Old Homestead. So one of the things that we're doing now that we are into whiskey production on top of sunshine production, with sunflowers and all that stuff, which is really, really interesting project. So with our whiskeys, they're American whiskeys. Now, those same mash bills, we will make some bourbon out of as well. They'll be the exact same whiskeys. They're just going to be barreled at a little lower proof, maybe a different yeast strain. We'll see. And those will probably only ever get released as single barrels. We'll probably never, ever do a bulk dump of bourbon for Old Homestead. What we're doing instead with these American whiskeys, with really unique mash bills and really unique yeast strains, is that we're actually running them through 3 different distillation processes. So take the same mash bill, 2 different kinds of fermenters, 2 different yeast strains, 3 different types of distillation. So stainless steel open top fermenter, wooden barrel open top fermenter, Kveik yeast strain, Newton Stewart yeast strain, which came from one of the old towns that's underwater at the lake now, double pot still, single pass with plates, and pot double thumper. Now I have the same whiskey made in 3 different styles going into their own separate barrels that can either be single barrels or they could be blended together. I can also play around with, say, for example, on the thumpers. There's nothing against doing this with a whiskey, or an American whiskey as it were. We can throw some sweet corn in the thumpers if we want to. We can throw some rye grain in the thumpers if we want to, and really push those flavors hard across to get them through. We can do the same thing with the gin baskets, and it's still whiskey. It's just a more intense version of it.
Okay.
Well, well, you're taking it one step further. I get it. And with bourbon has all the rules, but I'm intrigued because if you're taking it off to still a little bit higher proof, which then turns it not into what it is, but then you're still going back to a single barrel that you're talking about to produce higher proof whiskey off that.
It's actually not higher proof. I'm not distilling at higher proof. It's the same proof off the still as a bourbon. It's barreled at higher proof.
So you're the entry level. So then you don't.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's easier to obtain a hazmat than based off of bourbon rules, which is almost impossible.
And it's not even necessarily trying to hit hazmat. What we're really trying to do is introduce that brandy methodology for maturation into whiskey. So again, we've talked about this on your show before. Higher proof is more stable alcohol, which means that if I want that yeast, which is something that we're still exploring in American distillation, to really come through, and I want that grain to really come through, and I want that balance, just like I got out of Hoosier Apple Brandy at Spirits of French Lick, now I'm applying that to whiskey. And I'm applying it almost across the board with the exception of rye whiskey.
Okay. So then the other aspect, are you going to play with one of the coolest things I always thought, and I've seen it happen, but they do it with cognac more. So are you going to play with proofing down in the barrel? Because I always thought that was the way anybody should proof down. You get into 4 years and then you start to proof it down towards what you want to do it. But if it's being proofed down by adding water into the barrel and you get that lower proof, you're actually incorporating at least the water in the process as opposed to just adding water, get you your proof, and there you are.
So a couple things. So that would be my normal geek speak at Spirits of French Lick, which is we did a lot of that.
Oh,
there.
I did not know that.
Yes. So the problem with that is that is very labor dependent and labor intensive. You got to pull those barrels down. You got to monitor them. You got to check them. You got to add water. You got to check the proof. You got to change that in your record keeping, et cetera, et cetera. It becomes a huge, huge pain in the ass. So probably not, but
Okay.
I will do the same thing that I've done when I didn't do that at Spirits of French Lick, which is we proof down slowly over time, over a number of weeks or a number of months into a stainless steel tank. Now, the other side of that is that, you know, magic can be found in all kinds of forms and fashions. So, you know, slow proofing is one of those methods. But another thing that I think is much more intriguing to me, so we are now at the point where people understand what terroir truly is, and I don't have to give those explanations anymore because plenty of people are talking about that. Now let's talk about the truth of what that is. The truth of what that is localized yeast strain or Kveik strain that I've selected over the years, et cetera, opens off fermentation, you know, all the normal, you know, bourbon PR stuff, blah, blah, blah. What's the next step after that? So, well, the next step after that is taking a step back in time. And what's a true step back in time? Oh, okay. Well, you got a great big heritage distillery and you brag about your cave spring or your lake. And yet when you proof your whiskey down, you run that water through an RO filter, kill it, strip out all the minerals and all the flavor completely. Meanwhile, little old Allen in Hoosier occupied Northern Kentucky sets on an 8,800 acre lake that's one of the cleanest drinking water sources in the United States. It is beautiful, sweet water that is only going to have fluoride and chlorine and metals removed from it. You will be able to taste the limestone that is in that water in our whiskey. That water is not going to have the tendency to dehydrate you in the same way that RO water will, or strip you of calcium or anything of that nature. So now we're next level on not only slow proofing, but now we've introduced water as an actual flavor / terroir component in a way that modern distilleries are not doing.
So what kind of analysis are you doing on the water, and what kind of filtering do you have to do if you're going to use the lake water, which I'm all for, but I mean, you're making sure you send it out for the samples and everything so that there's no surprises. Obviously.
No, it comes straight in from municipal. So the cool thing is we're right down the road from where they treat everything. I've got all the water analysis. I've looked at it. It is surprising how little they have to do to this water. So filtration wise, it's literally like it's sort of the equivalent almost of like one of the Berkey water systems, right? It's literally just pulling out heavy metals, chlorine, and fluoride. That's all we're after. We want to get rid of those. Limestone, etc. And water, the water from that lake is so absolutely gorgeous, even in fermentation. Check this out. And distillers out there will be like, what the hell? We do nothing to correct pH on fermentation. Zero, nothing. And we land our fermentation at 5.5, well, between 5.3 and 5.6 on pH every single time. I tried to correct pH one time, and here's the fun thing about that water. That water is so pure that when you correct the pH, it takes all the buffering out of the water, and then the pH dives to like 3.1.
And then it wants to kill your yeast.
Yep.
Yep.
Let me
So okay, that's on fermentation. That I get.
Maybe is that like a reverse osmosis type filtration?
No RO, it's just a membrane filter is all it is.
But I mean,
just
when you're,
membrane filter.
I mean, fermentation's totally different. I get it. I mean, we've distilled with you, and I mean, when we took it from the creek, I mean, I was looking at that water, and you took it from but you're basically 100% evaporating it, all the stuff, and then that's what distillation is. I mean, the most purest water in the world, as far as not healthy water, but the purest is distilled water. Obviously, you run it through, everything's removed, it's stripped of whatever, and it's hard for stuff to get through. But as far as proofing down, that's what goes in your bottle. So that's what you don't have to do. You're getting it. The municipality is right there, and then they do very little, and then it's right there for right off the stuff that people drink. I mean, I'm just trying to understand the actual process. Or are you actually pulling it directly from the lake?
Oh, it's coming from the lake through municipal to us and then going through a membrane filter.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. That's all.
Yes.
I get in distillation, there's a lot of stuff that can be in there.
Yes.
That's the
Well,
more bad stuff in distillation, the more you have to clean the bottom of the still. So as a distiller, you don't want a lot of garbage, no cigarette butts.
Especially not if you're fat like me. You gotta get somebody else to get in there.
Or you could just make it on purpose harder to clean so that you get more exercise, right?
Nope.
He's like, nope. All right, let's start the podcast. All right, the actual audio podcast, and then we'll go. Then now we've gotten some of the really good stuff out of the way. All right, so once again, everybody, for Facebook and YouTube, this is sponsor week. We got our Old Louisville Whiskey Company, who sponsors our barrel banging. We've got Middle West Spirits. We've got Whiskey Thief. And we've got Rosewood Bourbon and Rye, along with the Spirit of French Lick, which has our current barrel pick from Alan. And so Alan's here representing a little bit of the old, like he talked about before, and the new, which we've been talking about a lot. And then also himself, Alan Bishop. If you have ghosts, you have everything. One Piece at a Time Distillery. And then what do you call your page on Facebook? Is it it's the Alchemist, right? But what's your astronomy, the reading? What do you actually call that?
That's just my personal page. But it's a whatever creator profile, whatever. I don't remember what I think it's hypnosis or something. I don't know. I don't remember what my actual address for Facebook is. But,
so we're going to actually, you want to kind of promote that part of what you do. So we're going to actually sit down and get it so that, we can put it out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute, that's phenomenal. And then also what you do, if you have ghosts, you have everything. Are you getting close to another season?
Yeah, so we're not really doing seasons of If You Have Ghosts anymore, because that got to be like, I don't know. Yeah, it's nice to have a break, and so now I'm on a little bit of a break from it. But instead of doing seasons, and like, I've kept feeling like I was doing this thing where I take time off and then feel guilty about it, and then like feel like I had to build it back up. So now it's just a matter of I've got enough consistent listeners that they come out when they come out, right? And it might be I drop one and maybe there's not one for 2 or 3 weeks. And I know that violates all the rules of podcasting, but I'm not too worried about that. Or there might be a string of 10 episodes in 10 weeks, or 10 episodes in 10 days if I got really, on one.
If you look at like podcasters that do that, what you do on those is it's not something you can just do. The people that you have on, you have to have you're talking about, there's the content that you're providing there's a lot of work that goes into to get that guest and then talk about what you're talking about. And so you look at some of the other people like on iHeart, they might put out 12 episodes a year. You know what I mean?
Right.
And my favorite is the Stars. And I just never, I wonder how much they pay for the iHeart radio ads when they do it, because they basically come out with this great podcast that you're willing to listen to, and they do 2 seasons and they're gone.
Right?
And
Yeah.
it's like, and here I am in doing 2 podcasts a week, and I don't really miss the dates ever, because I know that it's very important, because that's how you keep the listeners. You're growing. It's like I go to Kentucky this year, and for 2 weeks I don't put it up, and all of a sudden I went from 5,000, 8,000 people watching. All of a sudden it's like 150. So I fall into that same thing about being guilty, because my wife's like, you could take a break every once in a while. I'm like, oh no, you can't.
Well, I had to come to a little bit of a realization too with some of this stuff, because I try to do too much, and my daughter's getting a little bit older, and I need to spend more time with her and more quality time with her and with Kim and my mom and dad and all that stuff. But I had to come to a realization of like, listen, for 10 years, almost 11 years, I tried to kill myself with everything I was trying to do for the art of distillation, whether it was reenactments or it was podcasts, or it was distilling
Tastes.
itself, or all that stuff, right? So at some point, like with the podcasting, for me, I think I finally came to a realization this past year, like I'm not trying to make a living off of doing podcasts. I make a good living as it is. I'm doing the podcast for me, and so the only person that expects anything out of them is me. Now, if you have ghosts, is a little hard, because if I'm doing exposition episodes, I have to do all the research, and then I have to write all that out, and then I have to go in and narrate it, and then I have to edit it, and that turns into an hour episode. Takes a week to do a lot of times. It's hard to do,
And
I feel like
you've done a good job with it.
I know I've sat here, for 8 or 9 hours in one day working on something and going, oh yeah, this is going to be great. It's going to be awesome. And I get done editing and it's like 15 minutes. I'm like, son of a bitch.
Although,
I got 15 minutes out of 9 hours worth of work. What is that? That I'm not going to make any money off of, because I don't have a Patreon or anything like that. Every once in a while people send me gifts or stuff, through that or through One Piece at a Time or whatever. And One Piece at a Time has very much so become more this, I started doing it as sort of a spin-off of the Alan Bishop Experience thing. It was a little more serious. And I think for me, it became a little bit of like therapy for, Hell's Half Acre had sort of fallen apart, and some of those guys have passed away now. And so it became therapy for that. And now it's very much become like, I don't even do process stuff anymore. Unless it's at work. I'll do stuff at work, process stuff to walk you through there. Now I'm going to answer your questions about distillation, because how many other distillers that have been in this as long as what I have are going to sit down and really answer your question as a home distiller? Because I don't know
others that I know of.
Yeah.
Well, but also you're getting to the point where you have so many episodes where half the questions people probably ask you can be like, well, you can refer to episode number 32.
Because I could, but the problem is, and I ran into this, I've got a guy that listens a lot to a lot of what I do, and I really like him. He's I won't mention his last name. I'll just call him Costa Rica Bob. And Costa Rica Bob is a retired veterinarian, and he's also done about anything you can imagine in his life. And Bob is full of great ideas. He's full of great conversation. And then he's always giving me ideas for how to improve things. He's like, you should really index your shows and put them in your books where there's references. And I'm like, Bob, I don't have time nor the inclination to ever go back and listen to anything I ever said in the past anywhere. So Bob apparently is working on doing this for me. And thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. Bob also makes the single best, and it's a whiskey to a degree. It's got some artificial flavorings in it. The single best home distilled Fruit Loops moonshine that anyone has ever tasted on the face of the plate. It sounds ridiculous.
No, it doesn't.
And it is delicious. It is
pick
amazing.
Up juicy fruit and Fruit Loops in whiskey every once in a while. That's like a flavor, you like, where's that coming from? But it's like, that sounds delicious. There's no doubt.
I've tried it a couple times because Bob wanted me to try it, and I made the mistake of actually buying like real Fruit Loops one time. Doesn't work. You got to use the cheap ones that come in the plastic bags, or it does not work. It just doesn't. And there's another trick to it. You use some cornflakes in there too. I know it's all goofy home distiller stuff, but I love that stuff. I love it.
Yeah.
If I could afford to buy a damn truckload, a pallet load of Fruit Loops, I'd have them at Old Homestead tomorrow, mashing in Fruit Loop whiskey, because I can. But it's all a lot of work, and I love doing all of those things. I'm going to continue to do them. I probably won't try to kill myself doing them from now on, because there's no reason to. And the other thing is, I've figured out, like, the one thing I've taken away the past couple years, especially after leaving French Lick, getting to go back to Mount Vernon, work out there several times, and have a continuing relationship there, and
which I got to get to,
and getting to go and do work with Eric. Eric has been Eric and Aiden Pemberton as well. Those two guys have been sort of they've been kind of soul savers for me in a lot of ways. They've been two friends that I think I've been searching for a long time and never had really necessarily found on that same level. So the one thing I've realized is my real work is in education, and it's also in this spiritual thing that's tied to distillation. And so the books have become a much more major thing. The almanac is the thing. Like, listen, all this could fade away. Spirits of French Lick may go away one day and disappear. Copper and Kings might. Old Homestead might. hopefully these almanacs are something that even long after I'm gone, if I only ever do 5 of them for 5 years, whatever, they'll hopefully still exist to some degree, or maybe it goes on the rest of my life and it's something that somebody else can actually take over and continue with, right? Because there's value in folk information, there's value in folk magic, there's value in folk distilling, survivability, and all that sort of stuff. So that's become a little bit more.
Well, I think where you're at now, Old Homestead, the name, Patoka Lake Winery, I mean, I don't think that's going away. I mean, honestly,
I hope not.
I can't see it going away. I've been there in the middle of summer, and they basically had a winery, and they're like, all these people like to drink. It's like, so let's make a brewery, and it's like, holy crap, do they like to drink? So why don't we make a distillery? And that's what now is your tasting room open. Let's get this started, because you're going to be here forever if I can't put 45 minutes on tape.
Too.
Oh, sure.
I love good cold beer too.
DJ Hanselman makes some phenomenal beer, and I'm not a beer guy.
Imagine. I can't wait.
All right. Are you a rye guy now?
Who, me?
Yeah, you've always been rye's okay, but you weren't a big rye.
No, rye. I always preferred rye over bourbon. Rye and apple brandy and absinthe. Those were the three.
I knew you liked absinthe and apple brandy, but when you were doing the Solomon Scott initially, you were just kind of like not that excited about it, but you did it because you wanted to do a rye. I mean, I got it on tape if you want me to show it.
Maybe it might have been more. It might have been that might have had more to do with the people that I was working for.
Yeah. Okay. We don't have to get into that. All right. I get that.
You asked, brother.
All right. Then okay. Let's get this started. I got to do this 30-second thing. Then you're going to hear Kenny Fuller start singing, and then we'll get all the stuff out of the way. All right. Here we go. I love you, Alan. I miss you, that's for sure. And I can come,
brother. It's been too long.
I can come down next Friday, and I'm staying the night. So I'll either just walk around and you can tell me to get the hell out, and I'll go over to the brewery. Or whatever. I mean, I would like to see you though. All right, let's see. I got this set up.
Gonna have to defend myself against this rye thing, Muller. There's a reason I love Pennsylvania.
Do that on.
Yeah, man. I've drank a lot of that. Listen, the main thing that I if I am drinking whiskey of any kind right now, unless it's something like cheap tractor whiskey like Sazerac, it's either Stolen Wolf or Liberty Pole most of the time. Yeah, with Scotchy boys, making some noise. Yeah, with the Scotchy boys, we're here to have fun and we hope you enjoy. We're here to have fun.
All right, that was Kenny Fuller singing our Scotchy Bourbon Boys theme song. I'm Tiny. We got Super Nash and a special guest star. I have to say guest star tonight, Alan Bishop of Old Homestead. If you have ghosts, you have everything, and One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute. Welcome, Alan.
What's up? And Distillers Talk.
And Distillers Talk. Yes. Are you still doing that? Does Christy still go on that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. She sure does.
Yes. Excellent. But so great to have you on tonight. I'll just quick do it. www.scotchybourbonboys.com for all things Scotchy Bourbon Boys, Glencairn's t-shirts, and then also check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and X, and all the major podcast formats, Apple, Spotify, and iHeart mainly. But whatever format you listen to, like, listen, subscribe, leave comments, and make sure that you listen. I covered the.
You okay? Did you
Oh wait, make sure
Okay.
you leave good feedback. I had it all down real quick, and then at the end it just wasn't there. That's how it is lately. It's like the greatest thing ever is trying to remember somebody's name where you can picture everything about them. You know what they said last night, but you can't remember their name, and they were on TV. You know, they're that famous. You're just sitting there going, what is that actor's name? And you might sit there for 15 minutes, then all of a sudden it goes away, and all of a sudden, oh, that's the but it's out of context. It's like, I think, and I haven't been drinking. All right, so we have Alan coming on. It's sponsor week, everybody. Welcome. It's this podcast. We've already been talking a lot about different things. We were just finishing up. If you guys want a pre-game always, you've got Facebook. We're live Facebook and YouTube, so that always on there. But if you're just listening, you want a 45-minute fix of us, just keep listening on all the podcast formats. But I will say this, when it, you as a podcaster, so what I found out about YouTube, and Facebook, the longer you're on, I learned this from my son, who's a video game, and the main video game people that have podcasted and became famous on YouTube or whatever, they basically play video games for 8 hours a day online. So it's they're playing the game, and people come on at all times, so they get this giant viewership because all they're ever doing is playing the game. So I have this thing I want to come up with, and I might do it with Martin Kennedy he makes Bua Irish whiskey, and with Pat Burns down in Columbus, and he's in Ireland, brings it back. I mean, and then he tells me about what's coming over on the ship. But it's Ohio Irish whiskey made in Ireland. And Martin Kennedy used to work for Tullamore Dew. Okay, that's how he was a rep for them. So they're doing that there. But I was thinking, I just go down to the Irish pub at 8:00 in the morning. I start the podcast for Facebook Live and YouTube, and just go all day drinking Irish whiskey. I mean, ultimate podcast, right? For whiskey. Then I get known for the guy that just drinks all day.
What did JJ say?
He said, "Can we drink for 8 hours?"
Yes,
Sure.
JJ, you can join us there anytime. And it doesn't. I mean, they have bourbon, whatever, but it's Irish, and so it's kind of like that's what I found, that the longer I'm on YouTube, the way more views I get. But it's live, so as soon as it's over, nobody keeps checking lives. They want to watch it live. That's what it's there for. So, anyways, let's get back on the discussion, Alan, on rye whiskey. So
so let me clarify, and I'll try to do this delicately, Jeffrey. So
not Muller, Jeffrey.
I have always loved rye whiskey, and I always loved Solomon Scott. I think I know what you were driving at, or what maybe you were remembering. So I do not like 95.5, and I do not like 51% rye.
Oh, you did say that's okay. So then, yes. Okay.
I love rye whiskey though, and hence my two of my favorite distilleries of all time you guys are drinking tonight: Liberty Pole as well as Stolen Wolf, from the appropriate rye whiskey state of Pennsylvania, not Kentucky, right? And I love Kentucky as well, but it is not a rye state.
Although I understand what I'm about to say is going to be controversial amongst the people that you run, and maybe with you, but I think, in my own honest to God opinion, knowing Dan McKee, that Michter's makes the best rye that comes out of Kentucky, and it's almost paying homage. It pays homage to what comes out of Pennsylvania to an extent, except I think there's definitely the bourbon part of it. It's those caramels and whatever, where the Pennsylvania rye can have whatever but they are definitely, as I've been going through them, there is a definite aspect of Pennsylvania reclaiming rye that needs to happen, because that's what they were doing. Now, in Indiana, we were talking about a little bit about the rye and whatever, but I really think, from what I've been tasting of everything that you've done, that I really think Indiana was good at apple brandy, like damn good at apple brandy, because the apple brandies that you make apple brandy taste, and then you also age it, and so apple brandy almost is like whiskey, and that's not how I've ever thought of it. I've never, when I had apple brandy before, it usually ended up with me and the toilet having a relationship, and that's not the case with what you make. It's a totally different thing.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. That is the heritage of Indiana for sure. There's other heritages there that I haven't ever touched on.
All right. I gotta say this, because Kim just said this. If you break, and this is meant to me and Jeff, I'm pretty sure. If you break them, you keep them till he's not broken anymore. Ask Amsey Winter.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely true. I haven't been broken for a little while, so thankfully, hopefully that won't be the case. But there's always the opportunity for a shirtless pick. It just things happen.
And I agree with you. I hadn't been broken since I was broken with Amsey the last time at Bourbon on the Banks.
Oh Jesus!
As a real quick aside, I agree with you. Michter's does a fine job. I'm just saying, take it home where it belongs. And I also have personal feelings about that, because the way that that's a whole nother thing. But
I said I am well aware of what that is and what happened, and where the whole. So I agree, but it's probably wasn't the people making those moves were not Andrea and Dan.
Exactly.
They and I love, that's one thing. Initially, when you first start, you hear all the stuff about everything, and people talk about transparency in the industry. And yes, I think in a lot of cases, transparency can be done and used to your advantages. There's a couple Irish whiskeys that have so much transparency, it's insane. But
just hear me out. Here's a marketing idea. I'm just saying, I'm throwing this out there for funsies, just for funsies. I'm just saying that river connects to another famous river in Pennsylvania. Yeah. And you could get some steamships to pull up in Louisville, load those stills on those steamships, and move that whole thing back home where it belongs. And what great PR that would be for the world. Super expensive, sure, but awesome.
It's not like that. At this point, when you look at it, they have the money. I mean, it's what
right.
But what I will say, one way or another, I think Pennsylvania is doing what it needs to do. And and yes, you have different kind of things, but it's kind of cool to see Pennsylvania come back with the rye. It's it's almost like they do rise first, and it's kind of like cheesemakers. I was explained to me, either you make mozzarella and cheddar or you make Swiss, but you can't do both because and it's just like that. It's the same thing. That in Pennsylvania they're making rye. There you go. Pennsylvania, they're making rye, and then they'll do a bourbon, but it's the rye that they're making that you taste. Whereas in Kentucky, it's going to be a bourbon and secondary rye. There's no doubt.
And we got to give a shout out to Laura Petruzio, because she is definitely helped pushing to bring that rye back to Pennsylvania and rye whiskey, and doing a great job. Well, shout out to her.
And she's done a fantastic job, and she's in a state with, again, Liberty Pole folks, and also Eric and Avi, and JJ's down there. Somebody needs to put that boy in a distillery and give him some major ownership in that distillery, because you're missing out on one of the greatest distillers in the United States, greatest young distillers with a bright path in front of him if somebody just give him a ship that he was allowed to sail.
He just said he does live at the confluence.
Right? They could take them stills right up there,
Yep.
drop them off, and hire JJ.
Yep.
Everything would be made right in the world.
Well, what's even, or just order them and put them up there.
Right.
If I
yeah.
got,
Put
if I
the
got to
small setup
ship
there.
them, just send them up. Yeah, that would make sense. And they got all the stuff. But like I said, I was getting into transparent, but there's a certain aspect where some distilleries, they're not trying to fool you, because I don't think you can fool anybody, right? But they produce damn good whiskey, and that's the key in the end. It's just like whether you're transparent or produce damn good whiskey. You know, it's so funny, all the transparent people, with you look, it's just like people leave and they all tell you what they don't tell you what a mash bill is. They don't, not telling you all the details that everybody, but at the same time, you look online and they'll say, oh, this is what the mash bill is, because obviously they've had workers there and they might have been sworn to silence when they were there, but when they left, they weren't, you know, you can't stop it. So, but
Right.
everybody.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I like the minor leagues, like we were saying before this got started, right? And I've worked at the small distilleries, because here's the way you always have to look at it. Obviously, you have to make money. Everything has to be profitable, right? Yeah. But then you have art, and then you have money, and then somewhere in between on that scale, there's integrity, right? And so, yeah, I'll stay with the small guys.
Well, yeah, I so weird, because two of our friends, our biggest friends, is one of our biggest friends, and then our other biggest friend, Greg Schneider, and you guys are you're the same in your passions, but different total paths to get to where you're at. But at the same time, you both were in a similar situation, and both ended up with leaving one, and then he's in the process of where he's going to go, and you're already at where you're going to go. But at the same time, it's like, as a whiskey person who I was just, I mean, you already had been through so much and whatnot, but I was just like a baby and you basically took us, and same thing with Greg, and explained so much to us, and that we were so grateful for that. And you did it, you know, and we promoted and grew up with your brands, but right as the brands were hitting their peak, whoosh, and then it's just like, it's so hard, because it's kind of like cheering for or a quarterback playing for the football team the first time. They're with all their people the same age, couple veterans, and they do it all together. They win and whatever. And if you're a great quarterback, then all the other players leave and you start over and you do it again. And if you're Tom Brady, the last time you go to a different team and everybody's like 20 years younger than you, and you might do it, but it's a totally different experience from all three different levels. And that's the same thing for me. Now, I've never experienced my favorite person leaving his whiskey, which was my favorite whiskey, and then all of a sudden trying to drink that whiskey, and now it's like my favorite person isn't at the place. So then you look in the glass and you're just like, you see what you want. I'm like, little teardrops in, and then I don't see your face in there anymore, and then I'm like, I don't want to drink that whiskey. It's just like, but
it doesn't change the integrity of what's in the bottle.
I'm telling you 100%, Alan, drinking whiskey with you makes whiskey taste better. It's just like, it's just no way around it. Okay, it's the same thing drinking with Greg. I got all these bottles of what I won't say behind me. I'm like, I don't want to drink them anymore.
Yeah, and to be clear, we can say Spirits of French Lick, because the truth of the matter is, I hope that Spirits of French Lick lives on, regardless of whatever. That is what it is. I that is what it is. It's a lot of my legacy, my IP. That, because the way laws work in the United States, is not my IP, but
right. It's what
I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it. I just hope that they can keep their boat righted, or get their boat righted, and find a star and sail it by that, and stick with it, because they can't float off of my reputation anymore, and I won't let them. So.
Right. I'm gonna try and find out. I don't have. Okay. It's like, still, sponsoring us, and I've been talking to them, and for whatever reason, when it was with you, it's not whatever, but it was hard to get consistent out of them, or consistency out of them for me. But now,
Morse code.
But now they're damn straight, like right on it. It's like boom, boom, boom. They don't want to lose it, so I guess. So, but I got to find out, because I don't know how I could put who's there currently on an actual. I don't know if I want to put them on a podcast. I don't know what that would do. So I got to figure out what the hell's going on, how to do it. I'm still.
I don't know who's there currently, but
you actually do know who's there currently.
I'll reserve my commentary.
I know, and whatever. But I got to find out. So I'm not going to find out for bad purposes for you. I'll find out what's going on.
Thanks, Alan, for what you were saying earlier about him.
Yeah, I have all the respect in the world for Greg in particular. I really think he's a great guy and look up to him. I bet he and I are very much alike in terms of the way that we live our life and what we expect in life. And I just happen to bet, and I don't know him well, just through you guys. I just happen to bet that he's probably about like me. He's really not that hard to make happy. Really not. Probably.
No, he wasn't.
Distillers are going to distill, and they're going to put their heart and soul into it if they're real distillers. And then whatever the company does with that is on them.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it came down. Yeah, it just came down to, and just for the same thing, it was the same exact scenario setup, and it's just like it was becoming successful, and they wanted to take away, and he's like working his ass off. I mean, he was boots on the ground, tastings, single barrel selections, and then he was picking out staves to make the barrels. He came from the cooperage, and then he distilled it with, when they put it, he was there for the distilling, made sure, and then all the blending was done. And every time they made a purchase of whiskey that wasn't up to the standard, he figured out a way to fix it. It's like, they bought whiskey from 2012 that was put into used barrels because there was a barrel shortage back then. He bought a crap ton of it. They tasted it, and he's like, you can't put this out. So he's like, well, here's what we'll do. We'll buy brand new French oak barrels. We'll dump it in there for 6-8 months, and we'll call it double oak. And it's a damn good whiskey. So he could fix it, but there was no acknowledgement of whatever. They just feel that was a formula that they can pick and whatever. I mean, I don't know who's even going to do the blend. And it's just me and it's an art.
Yep. Yeah. Well, one day, many years from now, I'll tell my story, and then everybody will be like, "What?"
I know your story enough, man. You did a fine job. I honestly,
what happened?
You looked at it like it was a job that got you to where you needed to go. And honestly, if you want to believe in a God in one way or another, it's like in the end, it's, in my opinion, God guided you to the perfect exit. I mean, I don't think you could have played that out better. You could have wrote it in a movie and it wouldn't have played out any better than what it did. They could have went worse.
I think somebody kind of made a little short movie.
Yeah.
No, but
that was the much more unhinged version of myself for sure. I said that many times about my life in this industry, and my wife can verify this, and people that have known me the whole time. If I ever actually really sat down and wrote out all of these things, like for a small craft distiller, not distillery, distiller, for somebody that came from the family that I came from and where I came from, to be able to have pulled off the shit that I've somehow managed to pull off. And I don't have a lot to show for it. I don't have a lot of money or anything, but certainly there's been, plenty of attention paid to it.
Oh no, you have.
You would not believe the shit that I have been through just to stay in this industry. It's insane. It's insane. I literally, not Spirits of French Lick, but the other company, I literally worked for a guy that I'm convinced was one of the villains from Lethal Weapon 2. I'm not even playing.
She was electrocuting you in a
Just
shower. He had
white
you hanging there.
South African accent, just oh man.
Oh wow.
Just the whole thing. But yeah, that's all behind me. That's all good. I got cool stuff going on though. I got all kinds of cool stuff. I mean, we got,
it's a path. Just know that it's a path.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
And if you get out and you wake up every day, you're breathing, you have a great family, you have land, you have your dad and mom, everything, and what you're doing, and now you're doing it at a place where you're part of it. You're actually part of it. It's part of you. And then you this time everything was hands-on with you involved to do what you wanted to do, and now you're the mad scientist. It's an alchemist. But I what you make absinthe, you make brandy, you're making, and you have that. You still want to make some stuff that the standard people come and they know and whatever, because it's going to sell. I mean, I don't know if you make a limited amount of bourbon. I mean, just like people are going to be dying for that crap.
Kimberly says no one would ever believe it because it's absolutely unbelievable, but it's 100% true.
She lived it.
Yep.
Still living it, man. Still living it. Just have a different perspective on it now, I think, and a better perspective, or at least a somewhat healthier perspective on it. So, yeah, I don't have anything to complain about. And I don't, listen, I'm good. This is the last piece I'll say on Spirits of French Lake, other than to talk about products. I don't begrudge the owners. Listen, people are who they are, and they can decide to change, be different, be better if they want to. And if they don't want to, that's their goddamn American right to not do it. So, I might wake up tomorrow and decide to be an asshole. So, and it is what it is. But moving on from that, I got all kinds of cool stuff going on otherwise.
But at the same time, the only thing I'll say about it is I just wish they. So when you go, this is what Alan, you basically search and you find a treasure box, okay? But you don't got the key or the tools to open it, right? So you basically work with it and try it, and then when you finally open it, you look in there, and even though there's like $1 million worth of gold coins in there, you go, well, I guess I don't want that, and you close it up, lock it back up, and go on to the next thing. And that's kind of what I felt like what they did.
Or some people, they get to a point, and instead of anything else, rather than coming to a good conclusion, they fucking put a stick of dynamite under and blow it up, and then they just ruin it all. They ruin the treasure and everything, trying to get the box open.
Take the effect and make it the cause. So here's a little piece of advice for people who want to start distilleries, since we're going through a little reset with distilleries. When you hire a distiller who verifiably knows that they know what the fuck they're doing, make it worth their while to want to stay with their company. Make it such that they are comfortable enough that they would never have a reason to leave, and make it to where they feel like they are involved, even if you have to bend your will, your ego, and your pocketbook just a little bit, and you'd be surprised by how far you'll get. And I'm not even necessarily talking about myself, but I've watched many of my friends, very talented distillers, be screwed by people who have money, who have no connection to liquor otherwise, because owners suck, because they don't pay attention to their product. They don't care as long as that bottle's selling, and they commodify everything. And yes, it is an industry, and yes, you have to make money, but take care of the people who take care of you.
Well, okay, so
true, but,
from somebody who's been in
about another person at the
other industries, okay? So it's not distilling that ownership is like this. So people Now, I'm not talking about generational money. I'm talking about people in general who are really, really good with managing money. Okay. Whether they're in this business, that business, or that business. A lot of times, everything revolves around what they see, what they're good at. So you're good at distilling. I might be good at art. And there's a lot of aspects of distilling where, for instance, if you're a big distiller and you're producing high-end allocated bourbon, but you also make vodka, tequila, and other things, or gin, which doesn't have to age, and people drink it in mixed drinks like crazy, right? What makes the most money, allocated bourbon or vodka and gin? So a lot of times they're looking at that bottom dollar, and they look at it and they see everything. Now, there's where they really get in trouble. What I've seen is if what their main product, like the vodka or gin, is starting to falter because of marketing, because all that is marketing. You're convincing people to drink stripped spirits to get drunk. I still to this day, anybody tries to tell me that it's a good vodka, that just means that person made it taste like water. That's the ultimate goal of vodka, is to have no taste or smell. It's like the dumbest thing I've ever heard, but that's just me. But realistically, it's like they're not able to think creatively. So this is where the disconnect happens. They're just looking at that. And then because what the power of money says to them is status, or their place, it becomes very, what would you say, it makes them arrogant and mean to somebody who's passionate, doesn't care as much about money as them. That's why usually when you're doing something, and if you don't need as much money as somebody who only cares about money. You know what I'm saying? So I see it in all businesses. I can see it. Now, the other aspect is, the bigger you get, the less control you have of your money. So all of a sudden, more and more people are doing, and then as a person at the distillery where you control pretty much everything, right, Alan?
More or less, yes.
Yeah, and you might have a distiller that does that. I have a question. When you had a distiller before, not naming any names, if they were doing the distillate, did they do a pretty good job of carrying on what you wanted, or is there a lot of times that it wasn't exactly how you would have done it, and you had to kind of either fix it or figure it out? That's just a personal question.
And you're digging deep tonight. Hold on, Jeffrey. Okay, so first of all, you're correct in what you say about the money side of things. Now, here's the other side of things. So the difference with craft distilling versus a lot of those other industries, and there are other industries like this, or let's say small batch distilling, because I'm sticking with that. Me and Paul Menta and several others are working on this as a thing. So the difference is that quite often, the person who has been hired to be that distiller has been hired because they are the only person in that company that has any industry experience, not just distilling experience, but industry experience in general. And so what that means for them is that there's this expectation from day one that you're going to go far above and beyond what any normal employee would in terms of promoting, talking, writing stories, coming up with label text, coming up with intellectual property. That's a whole nother conversation I can get into in this industry. It's all kinds of fucked up.
Yep.
And so that's more what I'm driving at. If your brand, and yes, there are a lot that are making their money off vodka or gin or whatever they're making, but if your entire lineup and your entire existence as a distilling company is predicated upon, we make very unique, very off the wall expressions that demand a bit of a premium, and that premium is created because the craft of the distiller allows that premium to be created. then the owners need to kind of get the fuck out of the way and go out of their way
I agree.
make sure that person does not leave 1,000,000%, or they'll leave every time. And I encourage them. I encourage distillers to do that. Don't work for carpetbaggers. Don't do it. Fuck them. They ain't got the talent to do it on their own. Fuck them. Let them go. It is what it is. And, you know, brands come and go all the time, and it is what it is.
Yep.
As far as training other people, so, or having someone take over for me. I only ever gave that a go one time at Spirits of French Lick with Justin, quite obviously. I thought he did a really good job on the Psych Gin. That was me throwing him, quite honestly, into the deep end of the pool. I volunteered him to do a smoked gin for the fucking Eclipse, and I knew my time was coming to an end, and I thought he pulled it off wonderfully. They did not give him a chance to prove himself after that, unfortunately, for whatever that's worth. Now, I'm doing it again now, but it's not so much throwing somebody into the deep end of the pool. I have a still hand now who is a home distiller, or was a home distiller, is not anymore, used to be, and has grown up around it and knows his way around a still. I mean, this boy, I can turn him loose. I don't have to tell him shit. He has watched every video I ever made, read everything I've ever done. He intrinsically understands my style of distillation in a way that would be hard to put into words without actually having to physically sit down and train every single thing that I was doing. Don't get me wrong. I still talk to him about things, still give him ideas, etc. But this is the first time I've ever met somebody that was already on a level of, oh, I can fucking turn you loose and tell you what I want. And that's exactly what's going to happen, which is awesome because I've never had that before. Before it was always like, listen, if I get sick or something, you guys are fucked. You know, if something goes wrong, you're just shit out of luck. So this is the first time that I've had that where it's already sort of intrinsically there. He already had that knowledge. I didn't. I'm giving him more knowledge, deeper knowledge than I wouldn't normally give, you know, on one piece at a time, etc.
Yeah, I get it.
But he already has that foundational basis to build off of, you know.
But those are
Awesome.
No, I honestly, I know what you're talking about. It's just kind of like there's just certain types of people in the world, and where it comes from sometimes surprises you. I mean, I've managed enough people. I mean, what I really have to do is sometimes, and I've learned this over time, I do have to not go off the first impression. Because sometimes someone will surprise you. Not very often, but I like 90% of the times I know people who are going to work out, and if they don't, and if they're for this or that. But I'll give them a week or two just to see if they'll surprise me, because there has been those surprises. But at the same time, that's really cool that you found him, because not only does he know what you want, but he has the skill and the desire. And it really does come down to the desire. I honestly think I know I'm not a home distiller. Martin's way better. But if I came to work for you, what I do know is I understand what people are looking for when you're being taught. You know, I've been taught certain things. I was an artist. I learned to be a really good. First, I was an airbrush artist. Then I was a computer artist. I learned it all. But as from the standpoint was I always trying to please my dad the whole time it was happening, and he would always like come up with this or that. The same thing if I was to work for you. Not saying I'm applying for a job or anything, but I get there's certain people who get people. I know what you're trying to accomplish, and you're not trying to accomplish what I want. You're trying to accomplish what you want, and you want someone to help you. But by somebody like him showing that he's willing to do that extra to find out or know or do what you want, and listens, like you tell him one thing and the next time it happens, he had listened, and he doesn't let the whole still blow up. You know what I'm saying?
And even more than that too. I gotta say this about Tyler. So the cool thing about Tyler is, and first let me say about Justin, I sincerely hope that Justin gets into a distillery somewhere. If that's really what he wants to do, I hope he finds somewhere where he can do that. Absolutely. He did not get a fair shake at Spirits of French Lick, and they can take that however they want to. I don't care. But he didn't.
Set me for a loop when he left, because all of a sudden things were going. I had a direction, and all of a sudden somebody else was running the doubler.
The long and short with Tyler is that it's not even just distilling, right? If I ask Tyler to clean the windows, I don't have to go look at them. They're clean. I know they're clean.
Yep.
Right. If I say, Tyler, when you get a minute, I know you're busy as hell because there's only 2 of us here and we're running around everywhere trying to run 3 stills at once and do 2 mash-ins at once. And I say, when you get a minute, can you mop that spot over there? I don't have to come back around later and say, hey, Tyler, remember I asked you to mop that spot? It's going to get done. He's going to do it. He's going to take care of it. And I've not ever had that kind of help before, short of there were 2 guys. They had no interest in being in the industry full time for the rest of their life. I don't think. 2 guys I had at Copper and Kings, a guy named Darren Lee I went to school with. Big shout out to him. And another guy named Nate Cox, who had worked for Sazerac for many, or Buffalo Trace for many years. That's the only time I've ever had that kind of thing. Now Tyler has what they had, but he also has the distilling experience, which is phenomenal. You know, if I mention something theoretical about distillation to Tyler, and I say, hey, Tyler, what do you think about this weird thing that Alan wants to do over here that Alan would do at home if he was at home distilling? Tyler has enough experience that he can immediately wrap his mind around exactly what I'm saying, and then he can also pro and con it for me, as opposed to it just being a thing in my head, which is great.
Uh-oh.
Now I can bounce that stuff off people.
So now we're gonna get some good Frankenstein whiskey right there because you got your Igor.
Oh, I very much so do. I very much so do.
Yeah, no,
He's
yeah,
a
that's
beast.
awesome. That's awesome to hear. Super. And I bet you he doesn't miss much work.
No, he doesn't. And then of course, you know, I've got Jolie there too, which has been the goal, is to get back together with her and do something for a long time. And then my dad will be coming back part-time as well. And then of course we've got Steve and Heather, and it's a team effort, and it's going to be a big fucking deal is what I would say. Right. It ain't going to be a 50-state distillery. It doesn't need to be. It's an experiential distillery with limited distribution, but it will become a distillery that those people the people who are at the lake will already be there, but the other people that want to learn distillation and see distillation, it's going to become a thing where they're going to want to travel to come see this thing in a way that very few distilleries can be.
So do you have your rick house?
We do.
Okay.
We do.
Okay, because honestly, based off what I saw when I was there this summer, distribution for outside, you might hit some outside liquor stores that you know and love you and everything. But as far as distribution, man, it's going to be hard to get out of there. It's going to be like a whiskey thief thing. It's just going to be from the store. You already see it with the wines. And I'm not going to say that it's just like, but in my, you know, the brewery is done, you know, really well. And then you have wine barrels and beer barrels and all that you'll be able to do. Plus, it seems like everybody's on board, so you're not going to have any kind of backlash or whatever. You might even have say so in like, I really want to do a finished bourbon or a whiskey in this, and can you make that kind of wine? And they're like, oh yeah, we can. Or what, make this kind of beer? Yeah, we can. So, but as far as how many people come in and what they do, it's just like they are the epitome of
it gets pretty crazy over there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I will say, I do think even with the lake and everything, we probably are still going to end up being in time, not initially, but in time with the whiskeys. It's probably going to be a 5 market distillery is my guess. That's probably going to be about the sweet spot. And when I say 5 market, it doesn't mean the entirety of 5 states. It means 5 really good markets within probably 5 separate states.
Well,
or a couple markets in one state.
I'm putting in, you've already had Ann on your podcast for if you have ghosts, and you need to talk to her, because I'm putting in for Ohio to be one of those 5 states. So that you have to, it'll be fun if it's Ohio's one of those 5 states. That means you might come up here and visit me.
That's true. That's true.
And we could get in a lot of trouble up here. I could, Kim, I could break them and keep them for a while.
I just want to refer back to Kim's rule number 2. if he can't take it back to his own car, you got to take him home.
Yeah, I could see Ohio in particular. I would say this, Jeff. Given the number of home distillers and the passion for home distilling in Ohio in particular, I could see some of our weirder products actually doing pretty damn well in distribution in Ohio. And I think I've got enough followers there that it wouldn't be a problem.
I think you do. Plus, you got us. I mean, you start putting that, we're supporting that. And then also, you got mash and I mean, you have support for Ohio, and Ohio is one of the largest whiskey markets there is. Plus, they're actually taking their knowledge of whiskey and just applying it to all spirits. So I don't know how good that is, because now it seems like Ohio's like drinking 5 times more than it was 5 years ago. But we gamble and drink at a massive amount.
Train keeps rolling, brother. Listen, and then neo-temperance is a thing. They can dry up any other state, but don't dry up Ohio or Indiana.
And marijuana is legal up here now. And so they took away our director from OHLQ that really brought it back, and they put him in charge of the marijuana. So this is going to be a wild state pretty soon.
Yep.
I mean, I've done between gambling, drinking, and smoking. They got it covered right now. I mean, the sports gambling was insane. The amount that Ohio leads. It's just like per day. They're just like putting out these stats, and I'm like, that's insane.
Yep.
Anyways, all right. So let's get in a little bit of detail. Okay. So so talk about if you have ghosts, you have everything. What are the best podcasts where you're talking about both ends of this, both spirits aspects, the spirit industry with the spiritual things happening? What was like the best podcast you did where you're actually taking both of your worlds and blending it together?
I don't know if I have one I can pick like that, because there's been so many of them. Some of them have been highly personal. I will tell you that one of them that probably, and he and I are not on the same spiritual wavelength, but the one that probably moved me the most was Whiskey Shaman Randall down in Texas, and his story with his cancer and finding God and getting into the Septuagint and all that stuff. That episode was pretty fucking special. I think some of the stuff I did on like the how do you see God thing, like having Kevin Rose, who's an evangelical, and again, spiritually we're not the same, but we're brothers and I love him to death. But having him here in the bedroom telling his thing, or even we had Randall and DJ Henderson on together. Those were great. The ones that I really, really liked the most, though, and I'd mentioned before we started doing the actual audio of this podcast that, I do If You Have Ghosts for myself. I figured out that I'm doing it for myself, and I'm good with that. I like that. The ones that I like the most are the ones where either Kim and I get a chance to work together and tell a story, or I like the ones where I'm actually doing the exposition. Because then I can be a little more theatric. I can be a little more creative. I can touch on some spiritual stuff, literature and stuff, or esoteric or occult stuff that might be a little difficult to carry on conversations with other people. I will tell you, one of the issues with If You Have Ghosts, You Have Everything is you would be surprised. And part of this is because I'm picky. You would be surprised how hard it is to get guests consistently for that show. And part of that is because I have a pretty tight bullshit detector when it comes to if I think you're lying to me. And I can tell you that on this computer right now, there's about 4 episodes that will never see the light of day because I think you're full of shit. And most of the time I'll tell them if I think they're full of shit. Actually, I think I've told all of them that aren't getting released that I think they're full of shit. It's not about getting attention. It's not about going on as many podcasts as you can and telling the same tired story over and over again, especially not with If You Have Ghosts, because despite the fact that Ghost is in the name, it's really a show as much about cryptids or the Fortean, and more so about spirituality in terms of high magic and low magic, both folk magic and ceremonial magic, philosophy, theosophy, all those sort of things, which I'm much more interested in most of the time. Not always. Most of the time, I'm much more interested in those things, especially practical magic, than I am in here's another ghost story, right?
Yeah.
Ghost stories are a dime a dozen. They exist. They're out there, and I love them. Don't get me wrong, and I'll do episodes on them if I find them compelling. But the practical magic in terms of like the folk magic, and what I mean by that, I touched on this a little bit before the podcast too. The preternatural. So preternatural not being supernatural. Supernatural is a God thing, however you envision God, right? Miracles are a God thing, but the things that you can affect that might have scientific reasoning that we just don't quite understand or never can really understand, the things that are unlikely but somehow do happen that you seem to be able to have some effect on, that humanity has played with for millennia, that stuff really, really interests me very much. So
I'm all the part, honestly, the part about it all is that I know I have a certain talent within me, but I just wonder at this point, like, if I just keep going with the way I am and I only use it when I feel, I think I would say more safe or it's worth it, opposed to if you tried to actually, it's like there's such a thing aspect of when I tried to start to develop it, when you're talking about healing people and making them understand that if you're a diabetic and your spleen stops working when you're 12 years old, there might have been a reason for that, and that there might be something stopping it, or there might be, and they don't believe you, but then you help them. You have the permission through the universe to help them, and then they come back at you when they're feeling better, or they'll avoid you because they're feeling better, or it's working, and then all of a sudden you find out about that, and it's just so hurtful that they didn't want to tell you because they didn't want you to take credit, or they didn't want you to do this, or you don't, and it happens
because we live in a society now in general in the Western world where those things are not appreciated in the way they should. There is, let's be honest here, there is no room, and this goes beyond politics on either side. There is no room in Western society, polite Western society, for better or worse, for any type of anything that cannot be scientifically dissected and explained. And even those who are in the magic, and all the proof you need of this is to jump on TikTok for 5 minutes and look at all the people who are claimed to be witches, and yet, well, listen, what are you doing? You're doing a little tarot over here, but you got to have all the piercings, you got to have all the weird hair, you got to buy all the dead shit. Don't process the dead shit yourself. Buy that stuff off eBay somewhere, because you're not being authentic. You have a stage show, you have an act. That's as close to miraculous as we can get. Is I've got 300,000 followers, I must really have something special about me. No, you don't. If you did, you'd put yourself out there, and it would actually be integrated into who you are as a person and as your career, as part of your career, just like distilling is for me. And with your healing process, Jeff, people push back on it because they don't want you to have credit, because everything becomes about credit.
But people I don't want credit.
Raving about.
I just want them to be feeling better. I want that, whatever it is. And there's, it's so the reasons of why I can do it in my mind. If I explained it, to me, it sounds like I'm insane. But it's like, I know what it is, but it makes no sense. There's no explanation for what I'm doing, but I understand it. And it's so when I don't, all I want to do when I help the people that I helped, and I've helped probably 30, 40 people, and every single time it's dead nuts on, but I'm not looking, I just want them to feel better, or I want them to be able to deal with what they're dealing with because I can remove what's causing it, right? And when I explain it to them, but then to come back and say somehow I want credit, I don't want credit. I just want that, let me know it's removed and I'm happy. I'm not trying to, you know what I mean?
No, that's not on you. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that's on them. People are credit seeking for everything all the time, constantly, all the time. And more than that, like there would be a million explanations for what you do and how you do it, buried in dusty old texts that people don't really bother to read or understand anymore, powwow texts and cunning man texts and things of that nature. But people would probably feel less comfortable if they knew what actually was motivating any of those things or causing them. Like, does it matter? As long as it works, that's all that really matters.
Yeah, that's fine. I can do it. And it does work. But then I sit there, feel guilty. Like you were talking about guilty. You felt a little guilty that you weren't doing the podcast. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. There's a guilt aspect of, well, there's one person that I helped and it was working. And then they pulled away and they didn't want anything to do with me because they thought that somehow. So try and prove something to myself, everything that I did, I took away. And and they went back and they went 100% back to feeling like total shit. Okay. I just took it. I just stopped doing what I do. And part of it is a connection with a human being. And I know this is not a whiskey podcast anymore, but we're talking about if you have ghosts, if you have everything. So the spiritual, and I think that's why we're drawn together a little bit, because you do sense, we've talked about certain things. I mean, I really felt that your connection to what you do and what you research and everything, and your wife and what she does, because I understand, because when I was a kid, I did a lot of tarot card readings. I didn't understand why I was able to do it. It was just, it just basically, it wasn't all about the cards. It's about what the cards would tell me, and then the feeling and the whole mutual thing. And I could be right consistently. And it kind of freaked me out back then because I was young, and I stopped doing that. But getting into this, once again, it's a connection with a spiritual thing that I had. You talk about gods, right? You talk about this God, that God, this God. My spiritual moment when I was being taught, I had a vision, and I saw that all gods, all of them, are part of it. There's not just one, they're all there. They were all there for me. It was like the vision I had. It was woke, it was clear as day. They all appeared to me, all of them. All of them, they were like, it's the same God appearing to different people based off of who they want to see. It's not Christianity, it's not Judaism, it's not Hinduism, it's not Buddha, but it's still the same God as one, but appears as all. That was the moment that I actually physically had that thing. So you live your life completely and totally different. The fact that they're there, that there's something after. And when you know something's after, it's a whole different experience. So you have this experience, and then you try and go out with it, but you get burned. And then you're like, okay, so help the people around you. But then I'm sometimes feel guilty the fact that I could help more people. I mean, but some people don't want help. They don't believe it. Yeah. I mean, you offer it and they say, no, you can't help people who don't want help.
Alan, this past summer, I really gained a lot more understanding and respect for spirits, and I guess you'd say supernatural, because I actually experienced it firsthand with my wife. We went to Hawaii and she's Choctaw Indian, and almost 90%, and her sister is too, and they always had this thing about being drawn, spirits being drawn to them, and things like that. Well, we went out to the USS Arizona, and I just happened to be filming and looking down into the, to the sunken ship, and Sherry was on the other side, just on the other side, and a spirit came up out of the water towards her, and I mean literally just scared her because she didn't expect it, and came right at her. She came running over to me, right behind me, as I was filming, shaking, scared, and all that, and telling me about it. And then all of a sudden, and I got it on film and everything. All of a sudden, the water, I mean, it was calm as could be, and all of a sudden the water just started rippling right across where I was filming down into it. Then all of a sudden, this rush of air pressure, it was like nothing I've ever felt before in my life. And it was like I could almost just see it, like a mist or something. But that air pressure and everything come right up off of that water, straight through me, like it was coming straight to her. And she felt it, and at the same time as I was jumping back too, she saw it and felt it too. And it was just,
well,
I wasn't right the rest of the day. I called Jeff later that day.
Yeah, I mean, what happens for us all is when multiple people. So you've been around it, Alan, right? Where something happens.
Then, at the same time, we also, found it, realizing that there was over 1,000 people that went down with that ship, that were still, and spirits and all that were within that ship. And it wasn't like, and it's like she was saying, it wasn't like it was trying to hurt her or anything. For us, she said it felt more like it was just wanting them to know that they were there, or that it was there, and all.
Hey,
and it
absolutely,
it was just enlightening.
So, Alan, what I found is that the movies always go towards the bad experiences, right? They don't tell they're not telling the enlightening, but at almost every single thing that I've been involved with isn't anything like the movies. It's mostly enlightening, but at the same time, when I've dealt with something very, very negative, it's nothing like it at all. It's almost like what they portray is just almost like when you're saying bullshit, it's almost like most of the stuff that's been portrayed in the movies is almost like bullshit. Because, the whole exorcism thing gets played over and over, and that it's all evil and it's all this. But when you usually come across something that's negative or evil, it's usually not an aggressive thing. I find it just, in some cases, just runs away.
Well, and I would say that the even the portrayal of the spiritual aspects of higher ceremonial magic or lower folk magic, the paranormal, 14, etc., even in mainstream media, anything that really gets into like, oh, what's causing this thing, or what's, any analytical thing, like very rarely are you ever going to come across anything that really has any real substance to it. And there's only just a very few things that come to mind. And so Ridley Scott's Prometheus and Covenant and the most recent Alien movie, they've got some things in there that are pretty interesting, but you really have to be up on some of the Gnostic stuff, and also on some of the Edward Kelly stuff. Anything Philip K. Dick ever did is imbued with high magic, and anything that he inspired. The Matrix The guys that came up with Matrix should just write the Philip K. Dick estate a giant fucking check, because all they did was rip Philip K. Dick off completely. But even the humor in things too. So another great example would be, if you've not watched it in many years, and you have to go back to the original one, and especially the stuff that Peyo was really involved in, but go back to the Smurfs. There's a lot of stuff in the Smurfs. There's a ton of stuff, a ton of it
that they put in.
So yeah, especially you go back to that the animated Magic Flute. There's so much in there. With alchemy and cunning folks and all that stuff. The other thing that I get really aggravated about with modern day people, and I run into this on the podcast sometimes, and I like Danny Jones and I like Joe Rogan as much as the next blue collar guy does. Don't get me wrong, but I'm so fucking tired of hearing this thing about how psychedelics are the way into the spirit realm, and yes, just like alcohol, yes, there is an effect there. It's not the only fucking way. And it's not the only way that humanity has done it throughout time. I call it falling into a pothole. It's what it is. If you're a pothead, you're going to fall into a pothole eventually, right? There's nothing wrong with smoking weed either. But when that becomes the only focus of how we can communicate with these things, I have no interest. It's diversionary. It's abusive in the same way that if I told you as a distiller, like the only way you can find God is to drink spirits. Right, there's a spiritual aspect to drinking spirits.
Wait, no, it'd be like you're saying, well, the only way to find God is distill your own spirit and then drink it, and then you can find God. Yes, that's part of it's. Yeah, exactly. Well,
magic is everywhere. And spirituality is everywhere. So I got to tell you guys this: a little piece of philosophy, and these philosophies that I've developed over the years. A lot of this stuff I kept back from people for a long time until I got the courage to write the first book. And then now I'm doing the Distillers Almanac yearly with things I learned when I was growing up, things I learn every year, little things that are magic that you don't think of. So when I get in a place, and I told a very dear friend this the other day, she lost her job with a major distilling company in a very shitty way. And she needed someone to talk to, and I was kind of walking her through some things and trying to give her some advice because she needed to talk to somebody. And so I told her a few things that I repeat in my head from time to time just to remember things, right? Or just for positive affirmation or whatever, which sounds like a hippie-ish bullshit sort of thing, but things that really have meaning to them. So one thing, so a real simple piece of magic that people in everyday life can use every single day is literally to say the following words. I do it every morning when I walk out the door on my way to work. I'm on the earth. The earth is not on me. Right? It's not on you. You're on it. Take advantage of that. And the other one is, if I am in a mood or something, if I even get 2 seconds to walk outside and look somewhere, and you can do this even if you're in the city, you'll find somewhere like this. Anywhere you ever go, no matter how urban blighted it is, there will always be some little corner where the concrete is cracked. There's a few little shrubs or trees growing up that nobody planted. They came up on their own. There's briars and shit in there. And amongst that little hedgerow, there will be any number of useful plants. Maybe you do know the uses of them. Maybe you don't know the uses of them. There will be any number of animals trying to escape the suburban sprawl, as it were, at that point in time during the day. And those trees are subject and witness to all of the things that we do that we think no one sees. And so I always think to myself, the hedges have secrets. Well, all the magic of the world is in those places.
So I look at the world through a logical way. So if you're a spirit, and we are spiritual, and we actually do become part of the universe when we go in, and we have a consciousness that can go anywhere, any place, and do anything. Okay. So I always felt that if you could do that, the only way that you end up here inside a body with the amount of pain that's put on it is this is a prison planet. This is where when you've been bad, you're basically your jail cell is your body. And then all the things that control your body is how serious your sentence is. Like I always look at it like, let's just say a baby's being birthed, and then all of a sudden it passes away and there's a ton of pain for the people around, but the baby passes away. I look at it that the baby just got a one-nighter. It was just a one-nighter, was on the earth and whatever, and got released back its soul, whatever. It's just different ways of looking at it. But at the same time, I really believe if you're put into this, you're here to learn a lesson while you're there. And everybody's got different lessons to learn. Like the amount, some people that get in a car crash and they're in a ton of pain. Some people whose bodies fail them. You got all different types of things that happen, right? So I've always looked at it that way. So when I wake up in the morning, I just basically go that I know the sun's coming up and it's going to go down. And the goal is just to be the nicest, happiest person I can be, no matter what happens. Now, it doesn't always work, trust me, but it's my goal on a day, because while we're here, we all try and stay here so hard, right? Like, your goal is survival. Every single second of every day, you're trying to survive. You're trying not, you don't jump in the water and drown. If you can't swim or whatever, you don't do stuff to get off the planet. But at the same time, it would be such the greatest joke on us all is if when you do leave the planet, you're like, why the hell was I trying to stay there for so long? But most people are like, there's nothing else. But,
Right.
but you look at that, and that's almost, it's kind of how I look at it.
I certainly think that there, and this goes into more that higher magic sort of thing, but there are aspects of this place that is definitely a soul school for sure. We are a sublunar species, and everything that we do is dictated to some degree by the moon. We are spiritual, but the other part of that, and this is where I'll tie it back into distillation so that we can also touch on a little bit of that too. But spirit is a thing that people don't understand, spirit and soul, and they get them confused quite often. So your soul is your consciousness, your soul is your mind. And when I say mind and consciousness, I don't mean mind and consciousness the way that most people think of it. Think of it as the thing that is it is a receptor for a program that was laid out long before you ever got here. And it's not fate, it's what you pick up from what is coming from whatever the ultimate fount of this emanation of this world is, that continues to play out regardless of what happens to you. Say you get paralyzed or you're brain dead, right? Your consciousness is playing that out. It still exists. It is a separate thing from you. That is your soul. Your spirit is your vital principle. Your spirit is the animating principle of the body, what's called the vitus. And that is a concept that has been explored very heavily for a very, very, very long time in humanity. But it's the thing that makes all the physical parts actually have animation and have life to them. The spirit of the vitus is the quintessence of what and who you are here in this lifetime currently. One of the goals I think that humanity is supposed to have or should have, to be a decent person, I think you certainly should look at life this way. And if you can't look at life this way, I might argue that you're probably a psychopath. But one of your goals here should be to build or create or contribute beautiful and significant in their own way things that help you and your own people. And that can include things like alchemy and creating spirits. We use that word spirit because we're capturing the quintessence of something that once was here that is no longer here, but is trapped within the environment. Tying that back into spirits, that's why I always name things after people whose story didn't get told. It's a form of positive necromancy. You're bringing people back from the dead who didn't get their due diligence in life. And when you put that into a spirit, and you put that intention into a spirit, and people drink that spirit and they read the story, there's something they can connect with on a very primal way, what some cultures like in Africa, for example, or even amongst Native Americans might call ancestor worship. You don't have to be directly related to somebody for it to be ancestor worship. But that spirit is entering you just like a spirit can enter you, right? And it's causing a physiological change. And so you're hoping that that physiological change as an alchemist, when you're creating these things, is for the positive, and that it helps people, and it's something that is beautiful and creative and not used or disabused in the wrong way. And I've certainly been guilty of that in the past myself. But those are sort of some of the foundational philosophies of what I do and what I'm trying to do. And it's very hard it's taken me a long time to figure out ways to express that makes sense to other people. But That's sort of the short path to it.
I agree. What you said is exactly taking that one step. But what where I was going initially about where your spirit is, just imagine if a tree, when you were bringing up the trees, right? And people are looking and watching. And so if you're really bad in spiritual, well, your spirit gets stuck into a tree. So not only are you on the earth for 80, 100 years, but you're basically stuck in a position and you can't do anything except watch. You get to get rained on, frozen, you whatever, you go through the seasons, but all the, like you said, all that tree can do is watch for a long time, right? And it's just like I always thought of it that way, exactly how you were saying. Are they watching? Well, if it's a spirit entrapped, that could be another form of worse punishment than being a human being.
Or it might only seem worse to us from our vantage point. It might actually be better. You're still
with nature and part of the earth.
Physiology is, the physiology is obviously different, but certainly trees would seem to be much more useful to the other things on earth other than humans than what humans typically would be to any other species, I would say.
Well, that's true, except for the fact I just imagine anytime I'm kept and forced to stay in one place for any period of time, it's just pure torture. So I like to keep moving. So for me, you stick me in that that'd be pretty rough.
Right. I don't know, man. You put me next to a little stream, and
I say that, and then I got COVID, and I had to sit around for 3 weeks not doing anything. I almost lost my mind.
Oh, you're doing all kinds of stuff. You're being sexually reproductive in a cycle. You're creating children every year. You're sheltering animals. You're creating sustenance. You're part of an ecological system. You get turned into badass mushrooms after you die. I don't know. It might not be too bad.
All right. I'll give you that. Okay. So we've been on for a long time. You talked about the distilling aspect. So and then you're working on some. So you got the stuff up right now. The stills are all running, right? I mean, you got everything. Yep. And it took you a little bit to get that to that point, all of them going, because you did some really unique things to your stills. I mean, you have different ways.
Yeah, it's sort of twofold sort of thing. First of all is, when you're building a distillery in the middle of nowhere, and I learned this at Spirits of French Lick and also at a lot of other places I've consulted for, you're dealing with your local contractors, and your local contractors have never built a distillery before. So they're not, they don't know necessarily what you need done. They don't necessarily know the workflow. And so you've got to get to know those guys and, hope that they understand you and hope they understand what your process is. And then the other part of it is that Old Homestead is, to my knowledge, we are the largest all electric distillery in the United States. So everything there is electric element and jackets. So 500-gallon still, 250-gallon stills, 500-gallon cooker, all electric. That's a lot of three-phase power.
Wow.
And that's a lot of electrical engineering. And we just so happen to luck out, and we have an electrician that works with us who's a home distiller and a great guy to boot. But it did take us a little while to figure out what we needed as far as the electricity went to be able to get everything online. So from July until January, it was just the one 250-gallon pot with a double thumper, and we made several thousand gallons. That still has been run over 160 times since July. If that puts that in perspective for you, I don't know if you ever tried to make a few thousand gallons of liquor, 25 gallons at a time, but it is a feat for sure. And a lot of that was done without any other infrastructure really in place, just us mashing into barrels, having a single pump, etc. So everything is kind of, we were distilling in the middle of a massive construction zone, and we still are to some degree because it's a slow burn and a slow build to get everything into place. But yes, now all the stills are online. And so now we get to really explore what we were really focused on previously, was getting all the Sunshine and the Black Forest Spirits stuff going. So Sunshine is basically anything that's going to have sunflowers in it, which is a tribute to my brother Mike Stallings, Saint Sparrow as we call him, Moonshine Mike Stallings, who distilled with sunflowers a lot. And so I kind of took that and put my own spin on it and did a lot of malting and roasting, and we came up with several products there, as well as Newton Stewart, which is a traditional corn-based moonshine. We call these all sunshines because moonshine is an illicit product made by Lie of the Moon. Sunshine is a legal product that's made during the light of the day and using sunflowers, which is pretty magical in and of itself. We made a lot of really, really interesting liqueurs. So there's sort of two lines to that. There's a line that is the very sweet, kind of almost syrupy sort of stuff, which is based on sunshine. And that's going to be like your old apothecary flavors like cinnamon and root beer and butterscotch and all that sort of thing.
Lemon.
But then there's also, yes, lemon as well. There's also this sort of higher end liqueur stuff that we're doing that's not quite as sweet. And so that's part of the Black Forest line. And so that's going to be things like the 9-herb charm, which is based on an old English poem based on Woden, which is a version of Odin, of Norse Odin, and the 9 charms that represent the 9 different realms. It's kind of like chartreuse. We've got a peach brandy cordial. We're going to have a cherry brandy cordial. I have a heritage chocolate cordial, which is really cool. So this heritage chocolate is actually made in the style of colonial era chocolates. So I did a lot of those things, got that out of the way, and now we're into whiskey production on top of it. So every day right now, we are currently mashing in one of the sunshines, and we're mashing in a whiskey. And then we're running typically all 3 stills. So we're typically running a 500-gallon stripping still. We're running 250-gallon doubling still with the offset gin basket and column. I'm not running the column on that very often right now. And then we're running the pot with the double thumper. And we're able to manipulate a lot of different things. It's all open top fermentation. I really want as much of the local microbiome as what I can get. We're running 2 yeast strains right now, but we have others that we'll introduce. They're all self-propagated. We're not using any commercial yeast whatsoever. So we're running my Kvike strain, and we're also running the Newton Stewart strain that I gathered from one of the old towns that's now underwater at Patoka Lake. And with the whiskeys, we're able to do really cool things. So we're focusing on American whiskey because that's something that people should be proud of, right? It has America in the name, right? That should be a thing. It's made in America. It's American whiskey. It is what it is. I'm not trying to make bourbon. This is much more in line with the way that I would make apple brandy. So it's barreled at a little higher proof. It still isn't a new charred oak barrel. It still meets all the other requirements almost for being a bourbon or a rye, but it's not a bourbon. But what we're able to do is we will do some of those fermentations using Kvike yeast and going into stainless steel open top fermenters, some of them using Newton Stewart yeast and going into our barrel fermenters made out of wood. Open top on both of them, and then we distill in 3 different ways for every mash bill. So yeah,
Your fermenters, which you said stainless steel, how many gallon?
500.
How many gallon on the wood?
So they are 53 and 62 gallon barrels. So typically 250 gallons.
So you're just so you're doing actual barrels with the wood.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And there's a rationale behind that too. And the rationale behind that is that Cypress is cool, but it is a pain in the ass to keep together and to keep clean. It costs a lot of money. Whiskey barrels are cheap. If something goes wrong, you just put a new one in there. It ain't no big deal, right?
Okay. So no, I get why. So and then but you have the stainless steel fermenters up. Because when I was there the last time, you like you said, you were running the one still, and you were pretty much using everything and anything to ferment. And it was pretty cool.
Right.
Yeah. But I get it. So that's going. And a 500 gallon fermenter. So where's your blending tanks? How big are those?
So right now I've got 2 500 blending tanks, and then various other sizes, 50 gallons, stuff like that, just depending.
Or the smaller stuff, yeah.
Yep. And then there is a 4th still as well. Actually, there's 5 total, 6, but there's one at the winery we haven't hooked up yet. So there's the little absinthe still, which is a little 17 gallon, but you're starting with high proof alcohol to begin with. you basically get back out what you put into it. So if I put 17 gallons in there, I'm going to get 17 gallons of absinthe back out, or pretty close, damn close to it, one way, shape, or the other.
Are you distilling that in currently, or is that not yet?
Mm-hmm. Yep, we've been distilling it. It'll be there when we open up. So there will be 2 varieties of absinthe, essentially, or first off, and then there will be a 3rd variety introduced later, maybe a 4th variety. We will see. We will have a pretty extensive absinthe program on a small scale, but we're going to really take you through what absinthe can be in the United States in a way that nobody else ever really has. I mean, there's some great absinthes out there, and I love what Ted Bro does. But Ted focuses on the traditional absinthes. And so what we're doing is we're taking that, as I said, our sort of the motto there at Old Homestead is pushing the envelope while respecting tradition. So, we're taking the traditional things and we're putting our spin on them. We're putting a folk spin on them. We're putting a home distiller spin on them. Very much so. So
that was one thing that I enjoyed when we went down to New Orleans Bourbon Festival last year. When we went down to Bourbon Street, me and Jeff went down to the absinthe bar down
Old
there.
absinthe house.
Yeah, and we did a couple of tastings of some different absinthes, and
but Alan, they lit that shit on fire. I mean, honestly, I don't know how you can't. I think you should just have a special night during the summer where you just light the shit out of it, and then all the other times you don't. Because honestly, that sells. That's a marketing play that sells the living crap out of it.
It is.
It was complete, and plus that was another thing. It was almost completely dark in there in that absinthe bar.
Yeah, it was like that high off the glass. I mean, that girl went. I mean, even for myself, I don't mind the bohemian process. I understand it's not pure or whatever, but I personally like the sugar. Like if you're gonna put a sugar cube dropped in there, I like shit burnt. So you do that I like that flavor that it adds to the licorice. But I mean, for me, are yours going to be mostly anise, or are you going to do cinnamon ones, or are you going to do other ones? Are you just going to experiment the hell out of it?
So they're all based on things I've done in the past at home when I was a home distiller. So there will be a very traditional absinthe. There will be a purple absinthe that is much more earthy. There will be a yellow absinthe that has a lot of flowers in it, and things of that nature. And then as far as drinking goes, and this might come as a surprise, just like me not just being a straight double pot still guy, but I had to do certain things a certain way at French Lick because I was trying to present something very specific with that. The truth of the matter is, I'm pretty fucking agnostic as far as however somebody wants to drink their alcohol. If they want to light their absinthe on fire, fucking have at it. I don't care.
Right.
Just let me tell you the story first and explain to you what it is, and then, then go from there. That's fine. I don't have any issue with that. Some of that stuff's not necessarily for me, like obviously the sunshine stuff that we're doing, the more syrupy type stuff is not, that's not my wheelhouse, but
Wait,
I will say this.
I could say you make it really well. I got to taste some of it, and you might not. It's not your wheelhouse of what you drink, but it's certainly what sells. But there's also this. Are you doing that?
Oh yeah, the purple absinthe. Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Purple.
Or is that the black? That's the black one I sent you. Yeah.
Are you gonna do black?
Probably at some point in time, maybe around Halloween, we might do a little limited release of that. We might also do that as a limited release when we might do like a paranormal conference or something like that sometime in the winter time.
So maybe we can coincide the release of the painting, because I finally got the wrist to the point. Last weekend, I called the painting up again because I hadn't really, after I broke my wrist, it was like, there's a lot of fucked up shit that was going on, and it finally fell. So I did a little bit on it, and it was working. So I figured out I should be able to finish by the summertime.
Awesome.
And then you've got to make like let's see, a 30 by 60 space in your house to hang it, because it's going to come to you. And then every day you'll just be able to look at yourself.
No, I'll hang that in Jolie's office. She'll be all about it. Right next to her Sasquatch poster. Real quick though, jumping back to the whiskey part of it though too, is so we're using those two different yeast strains and two different types of fermenters, but then I have three different methods of distillation for each mash bill, for every mash bill. So I can do double thumper and pot, I can do double pot still distillation, or I can do pot and column. And it's going to give three very different, very unique profiles that go into their own separate barrels, which then can be chosen as single barrels or be blended together. And there's all kinds of little home distillers tricks that go along with that. Adding some sweet corn to a thumper on a corn-based product, or adding some rye to a thumper, or various other things like that. There's a lot of really interesting things that we can do, and some of these sunshines, I think, are going to surprise people, even people who are not interested in moonshine. This is not moonshine. It's an entirely different thing. It's much more along the lines of home distilled things. Some of the flavors are not the post distillation flavored stuff, but some of the flavors we actually can create during distillation using different processes and different ingredients, I think, are really going to blow people's minds. The sunflower thing has its own almost mezcal sort of flavor to it. But we also played around with a thing that we call Rise and Shine, which is a malted rye base. Of course, it's still got sugar added to it because it is a shine. But then we have different variations. So one of them is I went and collected hickory bark from my woods and toasted that like you'd make hickory syrup and put that into the thumpers, and that has a unique thing. One of them we threw some cacao nibs and we did a shit ton of different citrus into the thump barrels. Another one we did jasmine and chamomile into. And so those are very unique spirits that have gone into barrels. They are getting some barrel maturation short term. Trying to think of some of the other really weird ones that we did. There's been several that we did over the summertime. There's one we call Wycliffe Bell. Wycliffe Bell, sort of a tribute to Welsh style, something like Irish poachine, but it'd be a Welsh style. So it's peat smoked oats with peat smoked apples.
Where are you pulling your peat from?
So it's coming from Ireland is where it's coming from.
You're pulling it from.
Yep. And that's going into a number 3 char barrel, which is something I never do.
So you got to get the peat that they're using at Thornton. You got to get some Illinois peat.
No, we got Indiana peat.
You got Indiana peat. You don't like it?
Yeah, I do like it. Okay. I do like it. I didn't want it for that product though, so we will use it for other things. But yes, that's what I used on the Whiskey Witch at Spirits of French Lick was Indiana peat.
Okay.
So, but yeah, that'll be something in the future that we use as well. We're making some single malt. I'll be starting on that probably in the next few weeks here. That's actually a alder smoked malt, which is pretty cool. And there's some beach smoked stuff too. We'll be making a malted rye whiskey, but it'll be 100% malted rye, but it'll probably be a base malted rye and then a modified malted rye on top of it. Yeah, and those will all go through the same kind of variations. We'll run those through all three systems, and we'll run them on both different yeasts.
Right. Wow. What people don't know is that
I cannot wait.
It's going to be fun.
Well,
it's going to be fun.
You'll have some stuff for me to sample when I'm there, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I will tell you that I did, when you do get into Scotch and you're talking about malt, single malt, whatever. The pot still to this day, they say, is the way to do it. I mean, it's not something that converts to the column still. The column still, it's like it's pot still. I mean, the definition is pot still. It's just kind of like there's a lot of American single malts that are being made on column stills, and it's just like it's almost like a slap in the face.
Well, this is approach too from, again, there's the traditional, but pushing the envelope, pushing the boundaries. So it is pot still. But the other part of that is obviously it's alder or beechwood smoked, which is pretty weird. But now alder and beech, alder in particular, was pretty sacred to the Gauls, the Vikings, etc. We're using Kveik yeast for that, and it's my strains of Kveik because it's multiple strains. But one thing that we do quite a bit differently, there's a few distilleries that do this in the U.S. And I did this at French Lick too, but none of it's been released yet. So I don't lauder and sparge. All the grain goes in. All of it goes in. I want all that bran flavor. I want all that earthiness. That's the American style of doing things, and that's what we're going to do 100,000,000%.
And it makes total sense. We talked about this from the start when I first met you. It's like, why the hell would anybody outside of Kentucky try and make anything that Kentucky's producing? It makes no freaking sense. They produce so much of it. They can produce stuff that's aged that tastes like caramel, they taste butter, whatever. So you've always made something that's more towards you're pulling out the grains. You can taste the wheat, or you can taste the corn, but also you're pulling out a fruity note based off of your yeasts. And so I the first time we were podcasting, I think I did earn a little respect in the fact that I said you're making Indiana bourbon and whiskey, because why would you try and make Kentucky? It's like, enough of it's been made. If I want to go have Kentucky whiskey, you could go and get it off of like 50, but you can't get Indiana tasting bourbons off the shelf. Go ahead.
I just want to know who told you were gaining respect.
Well, and beyond that, now with this is this isn't even Indiana style stuff. This is Black Forest stuff. It's 1,000,000%. And I say that as not only carrying on the heritage of the people who distilled here, 100 years ago, but also as the progenitor of a style of distillation in a region of Indiana that is soon to include 3 distilleries between Spirits of French Lick, actually 4 now, Spirits of French Lick, Old Homestead, Spring Mill, and then a good friend of mine who's opening a distillery over in Tell City, another friend who's opening one up in Jackson County, just north of here. So it has become a thing. It is a legitimate thing now. So that is on me to continue to tell that story.
You don't include the other one?
They're not part of the Black Forest.
So they're just they're closer to Louisville they're outside of the forest. Okay.
And it's also a different branch of Germans.
Well, and it's also they're more of a farm type distillery than what you're talking about. Yeah. They're not going into the wilderness. They're basically within their own realm.
Yeah, they're definitely, and nothing wrong with what they're doing. They're just they're not part of the Black Forest whatsoever, right? And that's not anything against anybody else from anywhere else in Indiana. Just listen, I am very particular about the Black Forest. 2 regions, the Black Forest and then Switzerland County. That's my Indiana. That very much so. But another example, and this will kind of tie everything together for you guys, I think, and it'd probably be a good place to wrap up because I got to pee really bad. So if you have ghosts, you have everything. And so I've always done this, like I said, the positive necromancy, etc. And I've always said, even when I was at Spirits of French Lick, I was very honest about this. I have saved not only my best recipes and my best ideas for a place that could truly be home to them, which is what Old Homestead is, but also a place where they belonged. And so I've never, ever, ever, and you guys know this, leaned into my moonshine heritage in any way, shape, or form anywhere until now, ever. Well, and I've never named anything. Do what?
You went to a place that accepted at all aspects of distilling. That's why you're there. I mean, and they built you a goddamn distillery. I mean, what more can you ask for?
I also never, and part of this is a tribute to Mike Stallings as well, who also was from Indiana, by the way, if you guys didn't know that.
Yeah,
he was from Shoals.
I didn't.
Anyways, I never used any of my personal ghosts. I always used, because I'm a historian of Southern Indiana in particular, more so than I am my own family genealogy or anything like that. But the product that we're making right now is called W.P. Wilson, and that's my grandfather's name. William Penn Wilson, who my daughter is named after. He actually died the same day that my daughter was born. So now I've introduced one of my own ghosts into this thing. And when I say this, I can say this with a straight face and not be lying, which is something that very few distillers in the moonshine world or the legal distilling world can say. It is an actual heritage fucking recipe that I've known my entire life and been around my entire life. And it is maybe not made on the same type of equipment, etc., that he would have made it on, but it is made appropriately enough that he'd have walked over and patted me on the back and said that I was doing a damn good job. So that's a full circle thing for me to get to name a whiskey after my grandfather, who was not an outlaw moonshiner in terms of the way that people think of that nowadays. He was a fucking character, and he was hilarious, and he was just a hell of a guy and had a hell of a cool life. And he never did anything outstanding. You know what? Because he didn't have to, because he took care of his family and he did what he had to do for a living. And so to be able to name something after somebody like that is a real honor. Truthfully.
So do you talk to Michael's wife still? Stallings?
Do what?
Do you still talk to his wife, Michael?
Oh yeah, I still talk to Sandra.
Okay, yeah, because that was. I mean, I knew you at the time, but I also was friends with him because of just whatever, and watched that. That was a horrible time. There's no doubt about it. There's not much anybody could do. He tried, and it was just quick. It was pretty quick and fast once it happened.
He has a place in our distillery, 1,000,000%. We have his 50-gallon still named Sandra on display right there in the distillery, along with the map that he drew me when he gave me the still. That's all set up where everybody can see it. We'll use it for classes during the summertime outside from time to time. We also I have my 7-gallon that he built me. It's on display in the tasting room now. So Mike will always be a huge part of the distillery, without a doubt, and happy to tell his story, because he never got a chance to really tell his story the way that he should have.
Not at all. But I mean, and he was like at the beginning of what I was doing, and I didn't realize your connection until the end, when you were. Because after it was over, you guys have shown so much support for Sandra, right?
Sandra,
yeah,
yes,
just Sandra. Like, yeah, it was just not a. I mean, there's no doubt. It's just like my cousin. It was just it happened, and there's nothing anybody could do, and he tried, and it was just over.
Mike was a huge inspiration and a very, very, very dear friend, a brother. I'm honored that he chose me to give his still to, and that's why we call him Saint Stallings. And so there are people that have these. These are little pendants, little magical items that are for Saint Stallings, the patron saint of heathen distillers. And they're for people who spend their time actually understanding what this art is all about. So I owe some to a few other people still yet, and they will get them, and other people can earn them over time, but it's something that has to be earned.
I totally get that. No, yeah. he knew what he was doing, and he was a damn. You could tell from posts, he was a good musician.
He's a very good musician. So, absolutely.
I mean, absolutely. There was many times he was playing right from his hospital bed. So it was.
There's a bonus hidden episode. I'll throw this out there real quick for people that may have missed it. There is actually a bonus hidden episode of If You Have Ghosts, You Have Everything that you can only find on the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute on YouTube. Because you cannot upload an episode of music to most podcasts. But I went through all the publicly available or privately available live recordings, cell phone recordings, etc., that Mike did. Not the ones he did in the hospital. There's an actual album of those that Sandra has for sale. But I went through and I took the audio, cleaned it up. Sometimes I would add a little piece of music here and there to it, but there is an entire unreleased Michael Stallings live album episode of If You Have Ghosts, You Have Everything on YouTube.
Okay, there you go. Everybody go check that one out. All right, so Alan has to go. because he has to go to the bathroom. So
I'll change my tampon.
So let's end this on the regular one. Speaking of weird things with YouTube right now, I'm in a dispute because my guy Steve-O, who did the cover song for Alabama, all of a sudden RKO Records or whatever that owns the Alabama song with the Doors decided that was theirs. So they started hitting up all my podcasts that he did the cover. And it's a cover song of the Alabama song from 1923 done by a German artist. And somehow they're like saying that they have the right to the cover song of the cover song.
Right.
So I have a dispute, so I can't play it at the end. So we're just going to end it. Remember, www.scotchybourbonboys.com for all things Scotchy Bourbon Boys, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and X. And then also on Apple, iHeart, Spotify. Like, listen, comment, and subscribe. And then also make sure that you leave good feedback. And then remember, everybody, good bourbon equals good times with good friends. And that's what we're all about. And remember to not drink and drive, drink responsibly, and live your life uncut and unfiltered.
Hey, and go buy my damn 2025 almanac from the alchemistcabinet.com. If you're at all interested in folklore, magic, distillation principles, agricultural principles, etc., the almanac is available. You get it right now. You get a digital copy immediately. The physical copies are coming to me next week, and then they go out to everybody that has ordered them. So please buy that. That is the thing that I believe will be my lasting legacy. So,
all right. Thanks, Alan. Good night,
Thanks,
everybody.
Alan. Really do appreciate every time you come on here, man.
Yeah, I love you guys.
Good to see you, brother. Love you too, brother.
Too.
All right, we're off the recording part, the audio. So you want to go to the bathroom and just come back and say goodbye to everybody on YouTube and Facebook?
I'll just do that now.
All right.
Once I go to the bathroom,
All right.
I'm going to bed.
All right, sign out. You could, thanks again. We always end up doing 2 hours. I knew it, but I love you, man. And like I said, I'll be down there next Friday, probably 10, 11-ish or whatever. I won't, whatever. And then Jolie's not going to be there, but she basically told you where my clothes are, right? In her office. They're hanging up in her office, she said. Because last time I was down there, like, forever ago, I actually left clothes in the room and she got them for me. So they're just sitting in her office. Okay. But anyways, I can't wait. And then I'm
going to go pee on them.
Awesome.
Heck yeah, there you go.
Sign out.
All right,
sign
guys.
out. All right.
Later.
Love you. Thanks.
Later, brother.
Love you. There
we go. All right, Nash. So we got.
Might have to just skip the car show and me and you just go take a ride to Indiana.
Okay, so you're not going to have time for that. Already booking Amin, Walter. It's just all. There's not much I can do, and then on.
So you're not even going to try to. You wasn't even going to try to go to the car show.
No. I'm going to go to the car. No. I have it in the afternoon, so we can.
I know Marcus is still up watching.
Hey, Marcus, no. I want to meet. No, shush. You know what, Marcus? This is some super Nash bullshit right here. That's what this is. It's like, Marcus, I definitely want to meet you. I'm going to be at the car show in the morning, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And when
Marcus and Marshall, they're in bed by 8:00 on work nights. I'm telling you.
Walker's
he already told me don't call past 8:00.
All right.
I'm in.
So Nash, I can't wait till that March when we're together, because you're going to be drinking that Old Taylor with me, and we're going to hit that hard after the Maker's Mark one.
Taylor. What Old Taylor?
I swear to God, it's the best. Everybody out there. So now,
right there.
So right now,
look, right there. Oh, you're Old Taylor.
There it comes.
There any left?
It's for
there's
you.
a Nash pour left.
No, it's for you and me. It can't be kept very long because this. But oh my God, does it smell? It's like drinking liquid Brock's caramels with at the end it was burnt a little bit. It's so.
And I might bring up that 67 Ezra Brooks.
So
I'm gonna crack the top and bring it.
So you see what this is, right?
Yeah, I've never tasted that.
Oh, I'll bring that with me because if CT comes down, he's coming down on Saturday sometime, and we'll just get him drunk on black absinthe. Oh, that was an awesome podcast. Cheers. I mean, so what's crazy is that now that we've been on YouTube for so long, now it's going crazy at the point. So let's do a farewell. Oh, look what else. I upgraded. Everybody, this is awesome. So I was telling Rachel lately that every once in a while I do it and I get a headache in the morning. I realize that if I don't use this system right here,
oh my gosh.
if I don't use the Caper Dry system on my cigar, the cigars give me a headache. So I just got some for us, my friend. Look at that.
Drinking bourbon. This is the rose. Where'd you get those?
I just ordered on Amazon. Caper Dry.
That's the large?
No, it's the small.
Small? Okay.
I went with the small.
It's been out of the medium and the large for so long now.
You should just get it. It was there. They're all back in stock.
Are they? Okay.
Yep. And then finally, I don't know what I did, but I got finally the
rose and rye.
Yeah, I know. You picked that stuff up and I didn't.
I thought I was drinking. I thought this was the bourbon, the 101 proof.
You were drinking the rye.
Yeah, this is so smooth and creamy.
So I was thinking that for me, you and your brothers, I'd bring the football down.
Oh, they don't want to see you now.
Yeah, we'll drink the football. We'll just slam that sucker while we're.
No, that was for you to put up.
Do you know that we had people from?
Nobody want to drink no Cooper Craft.
Oh,
that was just
they canceled Cooper Craft. That's what they said at that was the big thing when we were doing the barrel pick for. And by the way, everybody, we did yesterday. I was down with the people from Kentucky Bourbon Festival. Thank you, Stacy Pritchard and Randy Prass was there. I was there with Todd from Codier. I mean, I just had an absolutely awesome time in between hell drives.
Alan, now that you're watching, I meant to show you this too, the rose and rye.
So
that shit is awesome.
So I got to sell a few more bottles of the Spirit of French Lick. One here. I've got this Lee W. Sinclair here that is available for anybody. You want to contact me if you're interested, or Walker, because Walker has
contact me,
right, or Super Nash. But this Lee W. Sinclair is exactly, in my opinion, what Alan
Lillian Sinclair.
I said Lillian or Lee W.
Lee W. Sinclair.
Lillian Sinclair. And I'm going to have some of this in my Scotchy Bourbon Boys, Glenn. Did you see that Alan was drinking moonshine?
He's watching right now.
Is he? He just came in? All right. I saw that Kim came in and took it. Because we were breaking him. I didn't want to break Alan. So anyways, I thought that was a fantastic. Yes, thank you, Walker. Walker says Lillian. I think Randy was on. So
you say, read the comment Walker said right before Lillian.
You're a spokesman for your brothers. Oh, hell no. I'm already talking to Marshall about what we're going to do to him that day.
Who? To me? Oh, hell no. Last time they conspired against me, I ended up sideways on the cart up against the porta-john, stuck. I was turned over sideways on the mobile cart, mobility cart.
Are we going to be? Is there
The
at this car show? Is this where there's
two
the
cops on the other side?
Is there a mobility cart at this show?
Yeah,
there are carts.
Yeah, we got them rented.
Oh my God! It's one rented for me.
We can do it. That's what I need to know. I'll need to know for sure.
For sure, I'm going to be there. What the hell? I'll just schedule something for 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
What time?
3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh no, it'll be over. We'll be done by then.
By noon?
You said 3 o'clock.
Okay, but yeah, we'll be done and we'll go over to do our things with Walter and
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'd rather go over to the.
Yeah, let's get car show. We'll do the car show from like 7:30, 8 o'clock. We'll go eat breakfast about 7, and then about 8. Go in about 8 o'clock. We get our mobility carts, ride around, and everything.
Okay. I can't. So I've already. I know at 7 o'clock we're gonna go eat breakfast, and that's gonna be some fun.
Oh yeah. Except for this time, I'm not going to take a chunk out of my leg.
I'm going to just get your brothers. We're all going to buy you squishmallows. Giant squishmallows. We'll just attack you. Money pile. You're going down, my friend.
No way.
Yeah, way. You know how to handle your brothers, but you don't know how to handle your brothers with your other brother.
Yeah, with
You're hoping after all these years that we're such good friends that I'll actually be on your side. But how you treat me when we're with our wives.
How old are you going to be? 65?
I can, yes. I can get the discount. I'll be able to get the discount, the senior discount on the cart, on the mobility cart.
You'll be able to have AAA on your mobility cart.
That's double ARP.
Okay.
ARP.
You got AARP?
Yeah. Anybody can have AAA. That just means if I get a flat tire, I call them and they change it.
Walker, we're coming up. Me and my brothers are coming up on the 6th, and I've already got 2 tours set up for them. They're gonna bottle their own at like 10 o'clock at Heaven Hill, and then we go to Maker's Mark, and at 1:30 they got the Maker's Mark tour. Do you know what time?
The 7th. You're not coming up the 6th. You're coming up the 7th.
6th. We're coming up Thursday.
Okay, but you're going to go to Maker's Mark on Thursday?
Oh, their tours are on Friday, the 7th. We're podcasting on the 7th. But
okay, Walker, you tell Nash that he was saying that he was coming up on the 6th, and then he was going to do Heaven Hill Bottle Your Own and a Maker's Mark. And
that's on the 7th. No, Walker commented, says I still want to see you on March 6th. We'll be in Bardstown on March 6th that night. That's where we're staying at. And that's why they're doing on that morning, Friday morning, the 7th. They got the tour of Bottle Your Own Bourbon at
on
Heaven Hill. That's on the 7th.
So they might have to come down on their own if I get an early morning thing. I'm going to contact them. It's February. I got to contact them right now about time to be down.
Well, yeah, they might have to come over to Maker's Mark by themselves. You'll have to come get me.
No, actually,
you'll ride over and pick me up for the podcast.
Ride over and pick you. I'm going straight to Maker's Mark from, I guess, what do I go through Bardstown and then to Maker's Mark? No, I didn't. I took some weird side thing from, Lexington and whatever. It took me down on the thing to get there.
Program it in your phone.
Hey, Walker.
You're Walker to take me.
Yeah, Walker can be if he's here on the 7th, I'll bring Walker to help with the equipment. What? I suppose I was early, but I can meet you all for what are you talking about? Walker. It's like
I'm gonna have to go.
Oh, you got
my dog's gotta go out.
All right.
Plus it's 11:30.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Let me quick. I'll shut it off and we can go. All right, everybody. We were just talking on Facebook and YouTube. Oh,
everybody for tuning in on YouTube, Facebook. We appreciate y'all.
Yeah, it's really okay. Yes, thank you for watching on YouTube. Next Tuesday night, 8:30. Check us out.